This book isn't a manual to make you feel good. It's not a recipe for making everything fit, nor a refuge to hide from the weight of your own existence. There's no sugarcoating what you need to swallow. What you'll find are hard, uncomfortable, and sometimes harsh principles. They're not here to convince you, they're here to confront you. If you're looking for quick relief, don't waste time, close it, because this isn't a text to calm you down, but to ignite you. Calm, if it comes, won't be because you find gentle words here, but because you learn to stand firm in the midst of what previously broke you. There are no promises of eternal happiness, no formulas to attract miracles, no shortcuts to avoid the inevitable. The only thing you'll find is the truth. And the truth isn't always a hug. Sometimes it's a blow that takes your breath away, but it wakes you up. Don't wait for gentle instructions. Don't expect me to hold your hand. Here you'll only find the edge of truth and the weight of your own decision. If you decide to stay, let it be because you're ready to hold both. Because there's no going back once you see what was always right in front of you. Chapter 1. The Non-Negotiable Truth. Truth is not a concept. It's not an abstract idea to philosophize over a glass of wine, nor a conversation piece to feign profundity. Truth is a blade. It cuts both ways. And if you truly want it in your life, you must accept that it will. It doesn't caress, it doesn't embellish, it doesn't conform to your comfort zone. Truth doesn't ask permission to enter. It sweeps away what's left over. And if there's too much left over, it will sweep away a lot. The first thing you must understand is that the truth is non-negotiable. It doesn't adapt to your mood. It doesn't adjust, so it doesn't hurt. It doesn't soften, so it doesn't hurt those you love. It is what it is, even if it leaves you alone, even if it changes you forever, even if it destroys what you thought was your life. And even if you want to, you can't mold it like Play-Doh to fit your story. When you try, you stop living in truth and start living a well-decorated lie. The problem isn't that people don't know the truth. The problem is that most don't want to see it. And those who dare to see it often don't want to uphold it. Because upholding the truth entails consequences. Breaking ties, losing comfort, changing habits you've been carrying for decades. It means examining your own hypocrisy and stopping blaming others for what you yourself have allowed. The truth demands that you stop being a spectator in your life and become fully responsible. Non-negotiable truth starts within. It's not about pointing fingers at others. It's not about going out into the world to shout about what's wrong. It's about sitting down with yourself without distractions and asking yourself, where am I lying? And the answer won't be comfortable. You may discover that you've been in a relationship you don't want for years, in a job you hate, in a city you can't stand, all because it's easier to pretend you're okay than to admit you're withering away. When the truth shows you those cracks, you have two options: cover them up or tear down the wall. Most people cover them up. They layer on excuses, motivational phrases, projects they know deep down they'll never start. Tearing down is harder, because once you start, there's no turning back, and every brick that falls leaves you more exposed, but also freer. Don't confuse truth with cruelty. Telling the truth doesn't mean blurting out the first thing that comes to mind without filtering and disguising it as honesty. Truth isn't brutality. Brutality is ego. Truth is precision. It's saying what's necessary even if it's uncomfortable, but without the intention of humiliating. And that's something many don't understand. Truth doesn't seek to win arguments. It seeks to clear the ground. There are those who pride themselves on always telling the truth as if it were a badge of honor, but what they actually do is use it as a weapon to cause harm. That's not the truth we're talking about here. The non-negotiable truth that matters is the one that confronts you before it confronts others. The one that demands consistency, not exhibitionism. The one that leaves you without excuses when you look in the mirror. Living truly involves losing things. That's the part almost no one talks about. You'll lose people who only loved you for the domesticated version of you. You'll lose jobs where your submission was valued more than your ability. You'll lose spaces where pretending was the norm. You'll lose reputations built on pleasing everyone. And it will hurt. It hurts to let go of what sustained you, even if it was fake. But what remains after the pain is worth preserving. The truth won't always make you happy. That's another popular lie. The truth at first makes you uncomfortable. It takes away illusions that kept you warm. It leaves you alone in rooms where there was once noise. It shows you how many of your choices were made to avoid discomfort, not to seek what was right. But after that discomfort comes something no lie can give: peace. The peace of not having to hold up a mask every day. The peace of not watching every word so as not to contradict yourself. The peace of not wasting energy on a role you never wanted to play. The non-negotiable truth also demands that you relinquish the role of victim. You can't keep blaming your parents, your partner, your boss, the government, or luck. The truth gives you back the full weight of your choices, even the ones you didn't make, because not choosing is also choosing. It doesn't allow you to keep hiding behind "I had no choice." There is always a choice, even if it's difficult, even if it's expensive, even if it means breaking away from everything. And once you see that, you can never again say you didn't know. There will be those who can't stand your change. Some will accuse you of being arrogant. Others will say you've become cold. It's not coldness, it's clarity. And clarity makes those who live in the fog uncomfortable. If you expect everyone to applaud you for choosing the truth, you're going to be disappointed. Many will prefer you return to your old self, because your example forces them to look at themselves, and they don't want to. The price of truth is high, but the price of lying is even higher. You pay it in daily installments of dissatisfaction, anxiety, and emptiness. You pay it with a life that feels alien, with superficial friendships and hollow relationships. You pay it with the slow erosion of your own dignity. And the worst part is that, if you do nothing, one day you wake up and discover you no longer remember who you were before you started acting. The non-negotiable truth is like fire. If you approach it without respect, it burns you. If you try to lock it away, it goes out. But if you nurture it and keep it free, it lights up. It's not for playing games, it's for living. And living in it isn't a matter of a moment of courage, but of daily consistency. It's not enough to tell the truth once if you then betray yourself again in every choice. The truth becomes a habit, and that habit is what builds a life that doesn't need to escape from itself. Recall practice. If you want to start living truthfully, choose a single area of your life where you know you're lying to yourself. Don't try to fix everything at once. Start with one. Name it. Write it down. Not to dramatize, but to see it unvarnished. Then take a concrete action that brings you closer to the truth in that area. It doesn't matter if it's small. The important thing is that it's real. And repeat. Each day, one step closer. Until telling the truth in that area is no longer an effort, but your natural way of being. There's no way to soften it. Living in the truth hurts at first, but the pain passes. What remains afterward is the only thing worthwhile. And if you hold on to it, you'll discover that the truth, while non-negotiable, isn't an enemy either. It's the most loyal ally you'll ever have. It never abandons you, even when you try to abandon yourself. Because the truth doesn't come to destroy you, it comes to restore you. It's no coincidence you're still here. If you want to delve even deeper into metaphysics, the first link in the description is waiting for you. Check it out. Chapter 2, Loneliness as a Forge. Loneliness isn't a punishment. It's not a condemnation reserved for those who fail, nor a sign that something is wrong with you. Loneliness is a place, and like any place, you can fear it or explore it. Most people run away. They surround themselves with voices, screens, noise, anything to avoid hearing what happens when you're alone with yourself. But the truth is that loneliness, when accepted, becomes a forge. A space where the heat is intense, the silence is heavy, and if you stay long enough, you emerge stronger. Don't confuse solitude with imposed isolation. Being isolated by obligation isn't the same as withdrawing by choice. Forced isolation can hurt, but even there are lessons if you know how to look at it. Voluntary solitude, on the other hand, is a tool. It's not about cutting ties with the world out of pride or resentment, but about creating a space where nothing and no one can interfere with what you have to see, feel, or decide. Loneliness is uncomfortable at first because you can't distract yourself from yourself. In company, it's easy to escape. There are always conversations to occupy your mind, plans to fill your calendar, little routines to avoid the silence. But when all that disappears, you're left. And then you realize that many of your certainties aren't your own. They were echoes of others, borrowed opinions, inherited beliefs. In solitude, the mask begins to fall. Not because you want it to, but because there's no longer an audience to hold it up. No one is watching. And in that moment, if you're honest, you begin to see the distance between what you say you are and who you really are. It's uncomfortable, but it's the beginning of any real change. Many seek external validation because they don't dare validate themselves. And here's the truth. You can't expect the world to recognize you if you can't recognize your own worth alone. You can't demand that others understand you if you don't understand yourself when no one else is present. You can't demand respect if you don't respect yourself when no one else is watching. Solitude isn't forever, but it's necessary at certain stages of the journey. Like iron that must pass through fire to harden, you need moments when everything external stops, and only the essential remains. There you learn to listen to yourself, and that listening won't always tell you nice things. You may discover that you've lived to meet other people's expectations. You may recognize that you've endured relationships and jobs that drained you, simply out of fear of being alone. The fear of loneliness is, in reality, the fear of knowing yourself. That's why when someone begins to embrace their loneliness, it makes others uncomfortable. They no longer need constant approval. They no longer desperately seek everyone's company to avoid feeling empty. They begin to carefully choose who they let in because they've learned to be fine without anyone. And that emotional independence is dangerous for a system that sustains itself on your dependence. Don't fool yourself. Solitude isn't an idyllic state. There will be days when it feels heavy, when the silence is so dense it seems to crush you. But those days are also part of the process. They're like the heat in a forge. Intense, uncomfortable, but necessary to shape you. Learning to navigate them without running away is what allows you to grow stronger. In solitude, you learn to filter out mental noise. The internal voices that once mingled with the external ones become clear. You hear your fears without distractions. You hear your real desires, not the ones you adopted to fit in. You hear truths you didn't dare acknowledge. And above all, you hear the voice that was always there, but couldn't compete with all the noise you yourself created. That voice isn't dramatic or bombastic. It's calm, firm, direct. It doesn't seek to convince you, only to remind you. And once you hear it, you can no longer pretend it's not there. You can try to ignore it, but it will always be there, waiting for you to have the courage to act on it. Solitude also teaches you not to beg for presence, not to accept any company for fear of emptiness. To understand that being alone is better than being in bad company. To recognize that true connection doesn't arise from a fear of loneliness, but from the conscious choice to share the path with someone who also knows how to walk alone. The big mistake is believing that loneliness is a sign of social or personal failure, that if you're alone, it's because no one loves you, because something's wrong with you. That's the lie we've been sold to keep us tied to superficial relationships. The reality is that many of the most profound transformations occur when no one else is around. Great decisions are born in quiet rooms. Great changes begin on days without an agenda. Great discoveries happen in moments where there are no eyes looking at you, only your own reflected in a mirror. Solitude, when experienced consciously, doesn't harden you into closing yourself off from the world, but rather opens you up to it in a different way. It doesn't make you distant, but more present, more selective, more authentic. It allows you to enter into relationships without needing to complete yourself, because you already feel whole. It allows you to work on projects without waiting for them to define your worth, because you already know it. It allows you to be anywhere without feeling like you have to belong at all costs. Forging isn't the final destination, it's a stage, but it's a stage you can't skip if you want the strength to endure whatever comes next. Avoiding loneliness is like wanting steel without going through the fire. It doesn't work. You're left weak, fragile, dependent, and any blow life throws at you breaks you. Practice recall. Choose one day, just one, to be completely alone. No phone, no social media, no distractions. Don't fill it with tasks. Be with yourself, even if it's uncomfortable. Observe what you think, what you feel, what you're trying to avoid. Don't jump to conclusions. Just observe and repeat. The more you do this, the more comfortable you'll become in your own presence. When you learn to inhabit your solitude, the world changes, not because it's different, but because you no longer see it from a place of lack. You see it from a place of choice. You no longer desperately search for someone to fill you, because you discover you weren't empty. What you were missing wasn't companionship. It was the courage to stay with yourself long enough to discover who you are without anyone else around. And once you discover this, you understand that loneliness was never an enemy. It was the most demanding teacher, the fire that tempered your character, the forge that transformed your fragility into strength. Chapter 3. Not asking permission to exist. From the moment you come into the world, you begin to be taught to ask permission. First, from your parents. Then, from your teachers. Later, from your bosses, your partner, your friends. It's not always explicit, but the message is clear. Don't move, don't speak, don't act until someone tells you it's okay. And so you grow up thinking that your life must be approved before you can live it. But the truth is this: you don't need permission to exist. You don't need anyone's validation to breathe, to feel, to choose. You didn't come here to be an acceptable version of yourself. You came here to be whole, even if that makes you uncomfortable. And that means stopping asking for permission. Asking permission is disguised as politeness, but it's often fear. Fear of making a mistake. Fear of being annoying. Fear of being rejected. You get so used to waiting for a green light that you forget the road is yours too. You forget that you can walk even if no one tells you to. Go ahead. And while you wait, life goes on. Time doesn't stop for you to make a decision. Every time you stop an authentic impulse to ask if it's okay, you're saying, without words, my voice isn't worth anything on its own. And that's a lie that slowly kills you. Because when you condition your actions to external approval, you end up living a life designed by others. It doesn't matter if they love you or think they know what's best for you. What they give you is their map, not yours. There are those who spend decades like this. Decades asking for permission to change jobs, to move, to end a relationship, to start a project. And sometimes the permission never comes, or it comes too late, when the energy has already been drained and the desire has dried up. What could have been a leap becomes a regret. And all because someone taught you that it wasn't right to move without someone else's permission. Not asking for permission doesn't mean being reckless. It's not about stepping on the toes of others or ignoring consequences. It's about understanding that your life is your responsibility and that no one else can decide for you what truly matters. It's not about living as if you were the only one on the planet, but about recognizing that your right to fully exist does not depend on the will of others. The habit of asking permission isn't always noticeable. Sometimes it's subtle. You ask for advice on everything. You seek approval from the faces of those listening. You tailor your words so no one frowns. And so little by little you fade away. You become a shadow that thrives on reflecting what others expect. The root of all this lies in the fear of rejection. Rejection hurts, it's true. But self-censorship is worse. Worse is living on pause, waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to be who you are. And the harsh truth is that not everyone will give you that permission. Some won't even understand. Others will deny it because your freedom reminds them of their own, and that makes them uncomfortable. If you expect universal approval, you'll never budge. There will always be someone who disagrees, someone who criticizes you, someone who calls you selfish or irresponsible. And if you live to avoid those voices, all you'll achieve is betrayal. Life doesn't reward those who please everyone. It rewards those who dare to be consistent, even if it means making them uncomfortable. Not asking for permission to exist also means stopping explaining every step you take. You don't need to justify wanting something different, changing your mind, or letting go of something that no longer nourishes you. Over-explaining is another way of asking for approval, and when you do, you surrender your power to the reactions of others. There's a key moment when you understand that not asking for permission isn't rebellion, but maturity. It's the moment you accept that you're the one who will live with the consequences of your actions, not those who have an opinion about them. And if you're the one who pays the price, it's you who must make the decision. Not asking for permission doesn't mean you don't listen to anyone. Listening is wise, but listening isn't obeying. Listening is taking in information, processing it, and deciding from your own truth. Blindly obeying is continuing to ask for permission without calling it that. Perhaps the hardest step is to stop asking for permission to feel. From a young age, you were taught to filter your emotions. Don't cry here. Don't get angry. Don't show fear. You grow up believing that even your feelings need permission, and so you get used to repressing them even when you're alone. Regaining the freedom to feel without asking permission is one of the greatest internal revolutions you can experience. Society rewards those who follow the invisible rules. They're easier to manage, more predictable, less conflictive. But that reward is a gilded cage, stability in exchange for authenticity. Not asking permission to exist is like opening the door to that cage, even if it's windy outside, even if you don't know what you'll find. Recall practice. Think of something you've been wanting to do for a long time but haven't done because you're waiting for the right moment, the right sign, or someone's approval. Ask yourself, if no one could tell me yes or no, would I do it? If the answer is yes, take the first step today, not tomorrow. Not when everything is aligned. Today. Even if it's a small step, it's yours. The first time you act without asking permission can be scary. You may feel like you've broken a sacred rule, but with each step, the fear diminishes and your strength grows. Until one day, you'll look back and think it was absurd to have needed someone else's voice to move you. Not asking permission to exist isn't an invitation to arrogance. It's a declaration of sovereignty over your life. It's recognizing that you are here and that you don't need to justify your place in the world. It's living without waiting for anyone's green light because you understand that the light was already on from the day you were born. Chapter 4: The Silence That Disarms. Silence is not absence. It is not emptiness. It is not nothingness. Silence is such an intense presence that many people don't know how to sustain it. We are accustomed to noise, voices, notifications, engines, songs, opinions, arguments. We believe that noise is life and silence is death. But the truth is that noise is often a distraction. Silence, on the other hand, is encounter. Silence is uncomfortable because you can't escape what arises within you when everything else outside stops. You can hide in the noise. You can fill every gap of sound so you don't hear the questions you fear most. But in the silence, those questions come closer, and if you stay, you'll hear them. The silence that disarms is not passivity. It is not doing nothing, like giving up. It is an active force that cuts through the roots of chaos. It is the moment when, instead of reacting, you choose to wait. The instant you let the dust settle before taking the next step. Silence is not weakness. It is a weapon that few know how to use. In a world crying out for attention, those who know how to remain silent become a mystery. Others can't read them. They don't know what they're thinking. They don't know what they're going to do. Silence creates a space where your presence is amplified, where every word you ultimately speak will carry more weight, because amidst the constant noise, the word that comes from silence is a lightning bolt. Silence is also a shield. When you react to every provocation, you become predictable. You wear yourself down in battles that don't matter. But if you learn to remain silent when everyone is waiting for your response, if you learn to observe without announcing your moves, you disarm the other person. Conflict loses its power when you don't feed it. There are silences that build and silences that destroy. The silence that builds is the one you choose to observe, to reflect, to feel. The silence that destroys is the one you use to punish, to manipulate, to accumulate resentment. One is a bridge to clarity, the other is a wall that closes you in. Don't confuse the two. Living in disarming silence doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations. It means choosing your timing and words with precision. It means not letting the urgency of external noise dictate your pace. It's like a fighter who doesn't throw random punches but waits for the exact moment for a single, sure blow. Silence is also a teacher of humility. In it, you realize that you don't need to have an opinion on everything, that not every discussion requires your participation, that not every criticism deserves a defense. Silence reminds you that sometimes the best response is not to play along. In personal relationships, silence can prevent unnecessary conflicts. Many arguments flare up because both sides want to have the last word. Silence breaks that cycle. It's not about always giving in, but about not wasting your energy winning battles that change nothing. When you choose to remain silent, not because you have no answers, but because your peace is worth more than victory, you realize the strength that lies within you. The silence that disarms is also experienced internally. It's shutting off the incessant mental dialogue that bombards you with worries, comparisons, and judgments. Learning to sit with yourself, without analyzing every thought, without debating every emotion, is a practice that cleanses your mind. It's not about eliminating thoughts, but about not letting them drag you down. In silence, you learn to listen to what normally goes unnoticed. Your breathing, your heartbeat, the distant sound of life still happening. You begin to realize that you are not just your words, your opinions, or your reactions. You are something bigger, something that doesn't need to make noise to exist. Many fear silence because they feel their own fragility within it. Without the disguise of constant activity, without the theater of social interactions, they are left naked before themselves. And that nakedness reveals what is missing, what hurts, what is unresolved. But it is precisely there, in that vulnerability, that silence begins to forge real strength. Silence doesn't always mean being alone. You can be silent surrounded by people. You can share a comfortable silence with someone who doesn't need to fill it to feel safe. That kind of silence unites more than 1,000 conversations, because in it there is no pretense or defense, there is only presence. The disarming silence also has an impact on the outside world. When you refuse to react immediately, when you don't respond to impulse, you change the pace of the game. Those who expected your quick response are forced to wait. Those who sought your anger are met with your calm, and calm is disconcerting for those who live fueled by chaos. Recall practice. Choose a time of day to remain in complete silence for at least 15 minutes. No phone, no music, no reading. Just you, your breath, and whatever appears. Observe what arises. Observe how your mind reacts to the lack of constant stimulation. The first time it may feel uncomfortable, even unbearable. But if you persist, you will discover that beneath that discomfort lies a clarity that cannot be found in any noise. Silence is a reminder that not everything requires your intervention, that you don't always need to be producing, speaking, explaining, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is wait. Not from passivity, but from the certainty that not everything deserves your immediate energy. When you learn to use silence as a tool, you stop being swept away by the noise of the world. You begin to choose your battles. You begin to speak less, but with more impact. You begin to respond from a place of calm rather than reacting from a place of haste. And then you realize silence isn't empty, it's concentrated power. The silence that disarms doesn't seek to destroy others, but rather to prevent you from destroying yourself in wars that don't matter. It's a space where you recharge, where you observe, where you plan. And when you speak again, you do so from a higher, clearer, stronger place. Because silence, when you understand it, doesn't make you invisible. It makes you impossible to ignore. Chapter 5. Pain as a door. Pain is inevitable. No life, no matter how cared for or privileged it may seem, is free from it. It can come as a loss, a betrayal, an illness, a breakup, or a truth you didn't want to hear. No matter its form, pain always brings the same message. There's something you need to see. And even if you want to ignore it, even if you try to numb it, the pain will stay until you listen. The most common mistake is to treat pain as an enemy to be destroyed immediately. We were taught to run away from it, to cover it up with distractions, to medicate it until we couldn't feel it, to cover it up with fake smiles. But pain doesn't come to destroy you, it comes to open a door that only opens from within. That door leads to a deeper, more real version of you. Pain forces you to stop. Life keeps moving, but you're suspended in a state where the superficial no longer makes sense. Small daily worries lose weight. What once seemed urgent fades away. Pain sweeps away the layers of the unnecessary and leaves you facing the essential. Many people mistake pain for weakness. They believe that if they're suffering, it's because they're not strong enough. But the opposite is true. Pain is proof that you're alive, that you care, that you have something to lose. And facing it requires more strength than any facade of toughness. Toughness blocks. Strength pierces. There are two ways to experience pain. resisting it or pushing through it. Resisting it means fighting it, gritting your teeth, pretending nothing's happening. Pushing through it means staring it in the face, letting it show you what it has to show you, feeling it without anesthesia. The first option prolongs it, the second transforms it. Pain also reveals who you are without your defenses. When everything falls apart, you can't hold up the masks. What remains is your essence. And sometimes you discover you're stronger than you thought. Other times that you were more broken than you thought. In both cases, discovery is necessary. Pain is a door because behind it lies something you couldn't see before. A lesson, a truth, a hidden strength. It's not about glorifying suffering or seeking it out, but about recognizing that if it's already here, you can use it to move forward. Every wound properly understood becomes a map. But going through pain requires patience. You can't force the process. You can't rush a wound to heal prematurely. If you do, it will heal poorly, and any friction will reopen it. Pain needs to be experienced at its own pace. It needs you to give it space and time to fulfill its purpose. Society pressures you to get over it quickly. It wants you to be productive again, to smile, to act as if nothing ever happened. This rush isn't for your own good, but rather because of the discomfort your vulnerability creates. But healing isn't a spectacle. It's a silent process that doesn't follow external timelines. It must also be said not all pain brings immediate revelation. Sometimes it just leaves a void, and that's okay. Not everything is understood at the moment. Some answers appear years later when you've changed enough to see clearly. The important thing is not to close the door that pain opened, even if you don't yet know what's on the other side. Going through pain means letting go of the idea that everything will ever be the same again. It won't. And that's the beauty of it. Pain doesn't come to take you back to where you started, but to push you to a new place. That place can be scary because you don't know it, but that's where your growth lies. Practice of remembrance. When you're in the midst of pain, don't ask yourself, why me? Ask yourself, what is this trying to show me? This question shifts your position from victim to learner. It doesn't mean everything has an immediate explanation, but it opens you up to the possibility that pain isn't just a punishment, but a path. Pain is also a filter. When you go through it, you discover who stays by your side without asking you to pretend, who can stand seeing you fragile, who doesn't walk away when you can't give anything in return. And that knowledge is worth more than 1,000 superficial friendships. Pain separates the real from the false, the profound from the trivial. Don't romanticize pain, but don't hate it either. See it as a messenger bringing something important. You may not want its message now, but if you reject it completely, you'll remain stuck in the same place. Pain is always change in disguise, and to the extent that you accept it, that change can become evolution. There are pains that never completely disappear. Not everything is ever completely healed. Some wounds become scars you carry forever, and those scars aren't weakness. They're reminders that you survived, that you went through something that seemed impossible. Bear them with dignity because they tell a story that few will understand, but that you will always know. Pain as a door is a reminder that not everything of value is comfortable. Comfort lulls you to sleep, but pain awakens you. And while no one chooses it voluntarily, when it arrives, you have the choice to use it as a step toward a more conscious version of yourself. The next time pain knocks on your door, don't rush to close it. Breathe, listen. Ask yourself what's on the other side. You may see only darkness at first, but if you stay, you'll begin to notice glimmerings. And those glimmerings are the beginning of something you can't yet imagine. But if you walk through it, it will change your life forever. Chapter 6, The Power of Saying No. Saying no is one of the simplest and at the same time most feared acts. 2 letters that can change the course of your life. Yet, most of us live saying yes out of habit, fear, guilt, or to please. We were taught that saying no is being selfish, rude, or ungrateful, and that learning leaves us trapped in commitments that drain us, in relationships that consume us, and in routines that distance us from who we truly are. The power of saying no is not rejection without cause, it's a declaration of boundaries. It's recognizing that your time, your energy, and your peace are finite resources, and that not everything and everyone deserves access to them. It's understanding that if everything in you is open to everyone, you'll end up empty for yourself. Saying no isn't closing the door to opportunities, it's opening the door to the right ones. Every time you say yes to something you don't want, you're saying no to something you do want, even if you don't see it at the time. The automatic yes is a silent betrayal. You disguise it as kindness, commitment, solidarity, but it's actually fear of displeasing, fear of losing, fear of being talked down to. And fear is a bad advisor when it comes to making decisions. Saying no takes courage because it implies that not everyone will understand or accept it. There will be those who try to make you feel guilty, those who insist, those who will be offended. It doesn't matter. Saying no doesn't need approval to be valid. If your life is governed by avoiding upsetting others, then it's no longer your life. You're living within a script written by other people's expectations. The power of no lies in its clarity. It's not a maybe, it's not a let me think about it. It's not a disguised yes that you'll later try to reverse. A firm no leaves no cracks for others to manipulate. It's a clean, direct, and honest boundary, and although it may make some uncomfortable, over time they'll begin to respect it, because they'll understand that your yeses have value precisely because you don't give them away. Saying no is also a form of self-respect. It's saying to yourself, my peace matters, my time matters, my priorities matter. It's not an act against others, it's an act in favor of yourself. And that's not selfishness, it's mental health. Selfishness is wanting everything for yourself. Self-respect is taking care of what you have so you don't end up giving away crumbs. He doesn't protect you from unnecessary burnout. He saves you from meetings that add nothing, from commitments that drain your energy, from promises you don't want to keep. Every no to something that doesn't add up is a yes to something that matters. But to get there, you have to be willing to be seen as the one who isn't always available, the one who doesn't say yes out of habit. Saying no also means recognizing that you can't do everything, that you're not responsible for saving everyone, solving everything, or being everywhere. This recognition doesn't make you less. It makes you human. Anyone who tries to be there for everyone all the time ends up broken and resentful. And that resentment is the price of not knowing how to say no in time. Learning to say no requires unlearning the idea that you're worth more for what you give than for who you are. You're not more worthy because you sacrifice without measure, nor more loved because you're always available. True love and respect aren't bought with obedience or unlimited dedication. They're built on honesty, and honesty includes knowing when to say enough is enough. Saying no doesn't mean you don't help anyone, but rather that you don't put yourself at risk to support what isn't yours. It means you help from a place of abundance, not lack, from choice, not obligation. A yes given from exhaustion isn't generosity, it's self-abandonment. The power of saying no also transforms your relationships. It filters out those who were only there for what they could get from you and strengthens the connection with those who respect your boundaries. A sincere no can be uncomfortable, but it can also generate more respect than 1,000 fake yeses. The person who stays after a no is someone who values you for who you are, not for what you give without measure. In life, saying no isn't just a right, it's a responsibility. If you don't set boundaries, others will decide for you where they end up. And most, consciously or not, will push those boundaries as far as you allow them. No is the tool with which you draw the outline of your life. Without it, anyone can enter, anyone can make demands, anyone can occupy the space that used to be yours. There's no need to justify every no. The more you explain, the more room you leave for others to try to persuade you. A clear no, said calmly, is sufficient. The explanation, if you give one, is out of courtesy, not obligation. Your right to say no doesn't depend on the other person understanding. Recall practice. Think of an area of your life where you feel overwhelmed or resentful. Ask yourself what you accepted out of fear of saying no. Then, choose a single situation to practice this. Don't embellish it, don't soften it or make excuses. Simply say I can't or I don't want to, and hold the silence afterward. Notice how you feel and remember that it will get easier each time. No is a closed door to what you don't want, but it's also an open door to what you do want. It's a filter that protects your energy and an act of personal affirmation. And although it may be difficult at first, there comes a time when you discover that saying no without guilt is one of the most powerful freedoms you can have. When you learn to say no, your yeses become authentic. You stop living by inertia and start choosing. You stop resenting commitments you never wanted and start using your time and energy on what truly matters. The power of saying no doesn't distance you from life, it brings you back to it. Because living to please everyone is to stop living for yourself, and no one can do that work for you. Chapter 7. Brutal honesty with yourself. Lying to yourself is the most silent and dangerous form of self-destruction. You don't notice it at first. It begins as small justifications. It's not that bad. I'm doing it for them. I'll start tomorrow. It could be worse. Words that seem harmless, but over time they become walls that enclose you in a limited version of yourself. The internal lie is comfortable because it avoids immediate conflict. But it comes at a very high price, your integrity. Brutal honesty with yourself isn't pleasant. It's not meant to make you feel good, but to help you see what's really going on. It involves dismantling the excuses you've used for years, acknowledging the truths you've avoided, and accepting that you're responsible for more than you thought. It's not about blaming yourself, but about removing the blindfold. As long as you keep justifying what you know isn't right for you, you won't be able to change it. Being brutally honest with yourself means recognizing where you're being cowardly, where you're giving away your power, where you're selling your peace for convenience. It's not about telling yourself, I'm a failure, but rather, what I'm doing isn't consistent with what I want, and then doing something about it. Self-deception is addictive because it allows you to carry on as if nothing's happening. Honesty, on the other hand, forces you to act. It's easier to lie to yourself than to admit you're not giving your best. It's easier to blame circumstances, your past, or others than to accept that there are decisions you haven't made out of fear. But every time you lie to yourself, you reinforce the idea that you can't handle the truth. And if you can't handle your own truth, anything can manipulate you. Brutal honesty also means accepting your true desires, even if they aren't right for others. You may want something that doesn't fit with what your family, friends, or culture expects of you. Acknowledging this doesn't mean acting thoughtlessly, but it does mean stopping hiding it. You can't build a life that's yours if you deny what you truly want. Sometimes the lie to yourself is so subtle that it masquerades as motivation. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right moment, when in reality you're avoiding starting. You tell yourself that everything happens for a reason when you don't want to face the fact that you didn't do what was necessary. You tell yourself that someday you'll do it, but that day never comes because you haven't truly decided. Brutal honesty nips those phrases in the bud and replaces them with the question no one wants to ask themselves: what am I avoiding? The truth hurts because it demands change. Once you see something clearly, you can no longer pretend you don't know. The internal lie, on the other hand, allows you to stay where you are without feeling as much discomfort. But that relief is temporary. Sooner or later, the truth you avoided accumulates and hits you harder. Brutal honesty with yourself isn't cruelty. It's not insulting or punishing you. It's treating yourself with respect and not hiding what you need to know to grow. It's looking in the mirror without filters, without embellishments, and without excuses. It's letting go of protecting yourself from your own potential just because the initial discomfort is scary. To live with brutal honesty, you have to let go of the image you want others to have of you. As long as you continue to build your life to fit other people's expectations, you'll continue to lie to yourself about who you are. The truth is rarely perfectly presentable, but it's always easier to carry than a lie. Recall practice. Take an area of your life that you know isn't working. Your work, your health, your relationships, your way of using your time. Ask yourself what part of that situation you're holding on to out of habit or fear. Don't look for pretty answers, write them down as they are, even if they make you uncomfortable. Then ask yourself, if I stopped lying to myself here, what would I have to do? That answer is what pushes you forward. Brutal honesty also means accepting your limits. You are not invincible. You can't do everything. You are not an expert at everything. Acknowledging this doesn't weaken you, it frees you. It allows you to focus on what you can do and ask for help with what you can't. The lie of eternal self-sufficiency only leads to burnout. When you practice brutal honesty, you begin to see patterns you previously denied. You see how you repeat mistakes, how you seek validation in places that won't give it, how you avoid conversations that could change everything for fear of conflict. And once you see that, there's no going back. That discomfort is the first step toward transformation. Not everyone is ready for your truth, and that's okay. Brutal honesty with yourself isn't about exposing everything to others, but about not hiding it from yourself. You can remain silent on the outside and still be radically honest on the inside. The important thing is that you know what's really going on, because only then can you decide. The price of lying to yourself is high. Stagnation, frustration, emotional exhaustion, lost opportunities. The price of honesty is also high. Discomfort, drastic changes, necessary breakups. The difference is that the price of lying drags you down while the price of honesty lifts you up. Brutal honesty with yourself isn't a destination you reach once. It's a constant practice. It requires daily vigilance. It requires frequently asking yourself if what you're doing, saying, or accepting is truly yours or an adaptation to avoid a collision. It requires the courage to let go of what no longer fits, even if you have nothing ready to replace it. If you choose this path, be prepared. Not everything you see will be pretty, but it will be real. And in a world full of appearances, reality is a privilege, because the truth, even if it's uncomfortable, always leaves you freer than the most comfortable lie. Chapter 8: The freedom to not be liked by everyone. The need to be liked is an invisible prison. It has no bars or locks, but it limits your every move. You constantly measure your words, filter your opinions, and adjust your behavior so as not to upset anyone. You become an actor in your own life, playing a role you don't always want, just to make sure no one rejects you. The problem is that while you work to please everyone, you stop liking yourself. The uncomfortable truth is that no matter what you do, there will be people who disapprove of you. You can give your all, be kind, always compromise, and still there will be those who criticize you, judge you, and talk badly about you behind your back. You can't control other people's opinions, but you can decide how much power you give them over your life. Constantly seeking approval is a path of exhaustion. There is no final goal because there will always be someone new to convince, someone different to please. It's a race with no finish line. Freedom begins when you accept that you're not meant to be liked by everyone, and that this isn't a failure, but a sign that you're living on your own terms. Not being liked by everyone means you're being authentic. It means you have your own opinions, you set your boundaries, you don't adjust every part of yourself to fit every mold. And even if that costs you some relationships, the ones that remain will be more genuine, because they'll be built on truth, not performance. The fear of not being liked comes from the fear of rejection. As children, we learned that rejection hurts, that being accepted gave us security, but maturity comes when you understand that rejection doesn't destroy you, that sometimes it's even a blessing in disguise. Not every place is for you, not every person is for you, and that's okay. When you stop living to please, you begin to see how many decisions you made based on the eyes of others, what clothes you wore, what words you said, what silences you kept, what dreams you hid. And you realize that pleasing everyone was just another form of control, an attempt to mold you to avoid conflict. But the absence of conflict isn't always peace. Sometimes it's just submission. The freedom to dislike everyone doesn't mean becoming insensitive or rude. It's not intentionally hurting or looking down on others. It's simply stopping sacrificing your truth to maintain an image that isn't real. It's speaking your mind when necessary, even if not everyone agrees. It's making decisions that favor your peace, even if others call them selfish. Accepting that not everyone will like you also frees you from the burden of masks. You no longer have to remember who you were to each person, because you're just you. You no longer have to measure every word to make sure everyone feels comfortable with you, because you understand that your comfort matters too. When you decide not to live to please, you discover that many criticisms lose their power. People can only use what matters to you against you. If you stop giving absolute value to other people's opinions, those words lose their power, and what once hurt you becomes background noise. Recall practice. Think of a decision you made just to maintain someone's approval. Ask yourself if, without that fear of disappointment, you would have made the same choice. Then, do the opposite exercise. Make a small decision this week based solely on what you really want without considering whether everyone will like it. Notice how you feel afterward. The freedom to not be liked by everyone also involves loss. Losing the illusion of control over what others think of you. Losing certain relationships that only existed because you met other people's expectations. Losing spaces where you fit in at your own expense, but those losses are necessary to gain something greater, your authenticity. When you begin to live more authentically, some people will likely accuse you of having changed, and they may be right. What they won't understand is that this change isn't a betrayal, but a recovery. You're not becoming someone new. You're taking away what was never yours. Living without the burden of pleasing everyone doesn't mean ignoring the impact of your actions. It means taking responsibility for living with integrity, even when it makes you uncomfortable. Because integrity isn't about softening the truth so everyone will accept it. It's about upholding it even when it causes friction. Over time, you'll discover that the people who truly matter don't need you to dilute yourself to accept you. That those who truly value you prefer your honesty to your complacency, and that those who can't handle your authenticity were interested in the version of you that served them, not the real you. Not pleasing everyone is a form of freedom that isn't learned overnight. It requires practice, patience, and a steady dose of courage. But once you experience it, it's hard to go back, because the energy you previously spent pleasing is now available to build the life you want. The next time you feel the urge to soften yourself to fit in, remember this: people will always have opinions, but you're the one who lives with the consequences of your choices. It's better that those choices are made for you, not to please an audience that will never be satisfied. Living to please everyone is a sure way to lose yourself. Living accepting that not everyone will like you is a sure way to find yourself. And when you find yourself, you no longer need approval to know you're on the right path. Chapter 9. The courage to be alone. Being alone is one of the most feared and at the same time most necessary states in existence. Most people flee from loneliness as if it were an illness. The day is filled with noise, empty conversations, lit screens, improvised plans, all to avoid that moment when there's no one left but you. But that moment, precisely that moment, is where clarity begins. Solitude isn't a punishment, it's a mirror. In it, you can't be distracted by the masks you wear in front of others. You can't hide behind the role you play at work, with your family, or with your group of friends. Being alone confronts you with who you really are when you're not acting for anyone. And there, in that space without witnesses, is where you can begin to truly know yourself. The problem is that many people confuse loneliness with abandonment. They believe that if they're alone, something is wrong with them, as if constant company were the measure of their worth. But loneliness isn't a lack of worth, it's a stage for recovering it. It's the groundwork for emotional independence, where you learn not to need immediate validation from others to feel whole. Being alone also reveals how many of your decisions were made out of fear of losing companionship. You realize you accepted things you didn't want, tolerated behavior you didn't deserve, and withheld important truths just so you wouldn't be left without someone by your side. When you give yourself permission to be alone, those compromises lose meaning. You discover that you don't need just anyone to avoid feeling empty. What you need is a solid relationship with yourself. Solitude has a power that crowds can't give you, the power to listen to yourself without interference. When there are no outside voices opining about who you are or what you should do, your own voice begins to sound clearer. At first, that voice may be muffled or shaky because you haven't heard it in a long time, but with practice and patience, it becomes steadier. The courage to be alone isn't about isolating yourself from the world, but rather about not fearing the moment when no one else is around. Because if you can't be with yourself without feeling discomfort, you'll seek out company just to numb that feeling, and that's dangerous. It will make you stay in relationships out of necessity, not choice. In solitude, you also discover your true set of priorities. Without the pressure to please or meet expectations, you can ask yourself what you really want, not what you want others to see in you. This is where many people realize they've lived years following someone else's script and that it's time to write their own. Solitude teaches patience. At first, it can be uncomfortable, even unbearable. But if you stay, if you don't run away in search of distraction, that discomfort begins to transform into calm. And in that calm, you find a kind of freedom that doesn't depend on anyone else. Practice recall. Dedicate a day to being alone without seeking external distractions. No phone, no social media, no TV. Just you and whatever pops into your mind. Notice what thoughts come, what emotions arise, what parts of yourself you've been avoiding. Don't try to change them immediately, just acknowledge them. That simple act is training for being with you without running away. Being alone also helps you filter your relationships. When you no longer fear loneliness, you stop accepting any company just to fill the silence. You begin to choose more carefully who you let into your life because you no longer need someone to be there just to keep you from feeling empty. Solitude, well lived, makes you more selective, and therefore your relationships become more authentic. Some people think that being alone for too long is dangerous, that it makes you distant or withdrawn. The truth is that misunderstood solitude can be a prison, but chosen solitude is a strength. Not to shut you out from the world, but to enter it with greater clarity and strength. Accepting loneliness also means accepting that not every moment of your life will be filled with people. There will be times when most people move away, when circumstances change, when connections break. If you've learned to be alone, those times won't break you. They'll hurt, yes, but they won't destroy you because you already know your capacity to sustain yourself. The value of being alone isn't measured by how much time you can spend without company, but by the quality of the relationship you build with yourself during that time. There are those who are alone and drown in their own minds because they can't stand themselves, and there are those who are alone and find in that space an inexhaustible source of clarity and energy. The difference isn't in the solitude itself, but in how you use it. Solitude is also a reminder that you are responsible for your own life. No one else can live it for you. No one else can make all your decisions. No one else can bear all your consequences. In the end, even surrounded by people, there will always be a stretch of the path that is yours alone. Solitude trains you for that stretch. Solitude shouldn't be romanticized, but it shouldn't be demonized either. It's a tool. It can be uncomfortable, even painful, but if you use it intentionally, it prepares you to live more freely. Because when you know how to be alone, you no longer compromise your peace for fear of losing company. The next time you feel like solitude is a punishment, remind yourself that it's also a privilege. Not everyone has the opportunity to disconnect from the constant pressure to please, to respond, to comply. Not everyone gives themselves permission to truly listen to themselves. If you take advantage of it, solitude becomes fertile ground where clarity, strength, and authenticity grow. The value of being alone is that once you learn it, you never accept just any company again. Because you know that if the alternative is to betray yourself to avoid being alone, you choose to stay with yourself. And that choice, though few understand it, is one of the most powerful you can make in your entire life. Chapter 10. Breaking up with what no longer serves you. There are things, people, habits, and ideas that made sense at one point in your life, but have now become dead weight. You continue to carry them around because they were important, because they helped you, because at some point they gave you something you needed. However, what was useful yesterday can be a burden today. And if you don't have the courage to break away from what no longer serves you, you'll live tied to a past that no longer fits with who you are today. Breaking up isn't betraying. It's not denying that something once held value for you. It's simply acknowledging that it served its purpose. Holding on to something that's already served its purpose isn't loyalty, it's fear. Fear of not knowing what will come next, fear of facing the emptiness left behind when you let go. But that emptiness isn't an enemy, it's the necessary space for something new to enter. What no longer serves you is recognized because it drains more than it contributes, because it requires constant effort to sustain without providing an equivalent return, because it keeps you stuck in inertia instead of propelling you forward. And even if you know it, even if you feel it, breaking away from it requires going through the discomfort of leaving what is known. Many people stay in jobs they hate, in relationships that no longer work, in routines that wear them down, simply because change is more frightening than dissatisfaction. They convince themselves that it is what it is, that at least it's safe, that it could be worse. But living like this is choosing a slow agony. It is giving up movement in the name of false stability. Breaking up with what no longer serves you doesn't always happen explosively. Sometimes it's a silent decision you make within yourself. One day, you simply stop investing energy in what drains you. You stop justifying the unjustifiable. You stop waiting for something to change on its own. And even though from the outside it seems like everything's the same, inside, something has broken. For the better. It's not easy because breaking up involves grieving. Even if you're leaving something that no longer served you well, there's a part of you that will miss it, that will remember the good times, that will wonder if you should have done more. It's normal. But grieving doesn't mean you made a mistake. It means you're processing the end of a phase. And every phase that ends leaves an echo before fading away. The greatest fear when breaking away from what doesn't serve you is uncertainty. You don't know what will happen next. And that not knowing is uncomfortable, even terrifying. But the truth is, nothing new can enter as long as you continue to occupy the space with the old. The emptiness is uncomfortable, yes, but it's also fertile. It's the ground where new opportunities germinate, even if you don't see them yet. Recall practice. Make a list of 3 things you know no longer serve you. Objects, habits, relationships, or commitments. Choose just one to let go of this week. Don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait for letting go to be comfortable. Do it and notice how the space left behind feels. That space is yours, and deciding what to do with it is an act of power. Breaking away from what no longer serves you also requires you to stop seeking validation to do so. You don't need everyone to understand. You don't need to convince anyone that it's the right decision. If you wait for approval, you may never act because there will always be someone who will tell you you're wrong. And often that you're wrong comes from people who benefit from you staying the same. Breaking up isn't running away. It's not about running away every time something gets difficult. It's about recognizing when effort no longer represents growth, but wear and tear. It's about differentiating between a challenge that strengthens you and a burden that destroys you, and only you can decide that. Sometimes what no longer serves you isn't something external, but an old version of yourself. Ideas that defined you in the past, beliefs that once protected you, identities you built to survive, but which are now cages. Breaking away from an old version of yourself is a radical act of freedom, but also of humility. It involves admitting that you've changed and that your old certainties no longer fit. There will be resistance, both internal and external. The internal resistance comes from the part of you that seeks security and fears change. The external resistance comes from those who preferred the version of you that was more comfortable for them. Not everyone will celebrate your decision, and some will even try to get you to go back on your word. Therefore, breaking up requires a determination that doesn't depend on applause. The process isn't linear. You may break up with something and then be tempted to go back. You may take a step back before taking 2 steps forward. Don't beat yourself up about it. Every attempt is part of the breakup because you're learning to live without what you once thought was indispensable. Over time, you'll look back and wonder why it took you so long. You'll realize that life didn't stop when you let go, but rather began to move in a direction more aligned with you. You'll understand that breaking up wasn't a loss, but a liberation. The real question isn't what will happen if I leave, but what will happen if I stay? And if the answer is that staying there is draining you, then you already have your answer. The comfort of the familiar isn't worth the price of your life being unfulfilled. Breaking away from what no longer serves you is an act of self-love. It's not selfishness, it's not ingratitude, it's not impulsiveness. It's choosing yourself even when it's difficult. It's recognizing that you deserve more than a life of resignation. It's stopping negotiating your peace out of fear of change. When you learn to let go of what doesn't serve you, your life becomes lighter. You begin to move with more intention because everything you keep has a real purpose. And you discover that, although breaking up hurts, living with what's left over hurts even more. Chapter 11. Discipline as freedom. Most people see discipline as a chain, as a restriction that takes away spontaneity and joy. They imagine it as an external force that compels, limits, and imposes. That's why they avoid it, always seeking the path of least resistance, the shortest route, immediate gratification. But the truth is that discipline isn't a prison, it's a key. And those who learn to use it discover that there is no more powerful tool for building the life they truly want. Freedom without discipline is an illusion. You can have all the time, resources, and opportunities in the world, but if you don't have control over yourself, you'll waste what you have. Without discipline, life becomes a collection of momentary impulses that rarely lead to anything solid. It's like trying to sail aimlessly, hoping the wind will carry you to a perfect place. You may get there, but it won't be the one you chose. Discipline isn't punishment. It's not depriving yourself of what you love simply for the sake of suffering. It's a commitment to your own decisions. It's saying, this is what I want, and then doing whatever it takes to get it, even when you don't feel like it, even when no one is looking. Because if you only act when you feel motivated, you're leaving your life at the mercy of an emotional state that changes every day. Those without discipline live by reacting. They move only when something pushes them or when pain compels them. They wait until the last moment to act and then complain about the pressure. Discipline, on the other hand, allows you to move before it's urgent, before chaos overtakes you. It gives you the advantage of being ahead of the game. It's easy to be disciplined when everything is going well, when there's energy and enthusiasm. True discipline is measured on dull days, on mornings when you don't want to get up, on afternoons when you'd rather relax. That's where you see whether you're in control of yourself or a slave to your excuses. Discipline is uncomfortable at first because it requires breaking the addiction to the immediate. We live in a world that sells quick rewards, a click, an order, a message, a boost. Discipline forces you to wait, to build, to repeat, to sustain. It's about going against the flow of instant consumption to gain something more lasting, real results, personal mastery, self-confidence. Recall practice and choose a single area of your life where you feel stuck. Define a small but non-negotiable daily action that will bring you closer to what you want. It doesn't matter if it's writing for 15 minutes, exercising for half an hour, learning 10 words of a language, or reading a chapter. Do it every day for a month. No excuses. You'll discover that discipline doesn't kill your freedom, but rather expands it. Discipline is also a filter. When you're disciplined, you stop saying yes to everything. You know that every commitment you make competes for your energy and time. And because you're clear about what matters, you can say no to what doesn't add up. Without discipline, you end up wasting your life on things you didn't consciously choose. Some people fear that discipline will take away their spontaneity, that it will make them rigid. But the truth is that discipline gives you space for true freedom. Because when you stick to the essentials, when you have the important things in order, you can improvise without everything falling apart. Indiscipline, on the other hand, turns every unexpected event into chaos. Discipline teaches you that it's not all about feeling motivated. Motivation is volatile, it comes and goes. Discipline is stable. It's there whether you want it or not. And the more you practice it, the less you depend on feeling ready to act. You learn that action creates motivation, not the other way around. Without discipline, any big goal is impossible. You don't build a solid business, a strong body, a clear mind, or a stable relationship on occasional impulses. Everything worthwhile requires repetition, consistency, and patience. And all of that is discipline. Don't confuse discipline with perfectionism. It's not about doing everything perfectly, but about not giving up. There will be days when you fail, when you don't accomplish exactly what you wanted. The difference between someone who fails and someone who achieves what they want isn't that you never fail, but that you try again and again without giving up. Discipline is also an act of self-love. You don't wait for others to rescue you. You don't leave your life to chance. You don't treat yourself as if you don't matter. You respect yourself enough to uphold what you know is good for you, even when no one else demands it. At first, discipline may feel like a sacrifice, but over time, it becomes part of who you are. You no longer have to convince yourself to do things. You just do them. And that change is liberating because it means you're no longer dependent on constant internal negotiations. The freedom that discipline brings isn't just external, like achieving goals or improving your material life. It's internal. It's the peace of mind that comes from knowing you can trust yourself. That if you say you'll do something, you'll do it. That you don't need perfect conditions to act. That self-confidence is a kind of freedom that can't be bought or imitated. Discipline protects you from yourself, from that part of you that wants to procrastinate, that seeks comfort, that gives up easily. It doesn't eliminate that voice. It teaches it who's in charge. And when you learn to stand firm, that same firmness is reflected in every area of your life. If discipline seems difficult, remember this: so is indiscipline. Living without discipline brings stress, disorder, insecurity, and regret. Choose your difficulty. Discipline is demanding at first, but it bears lasting fruit. Indiscipline is comfortable at first, but it exacts a heavy price later. Those who understand that discipline is freedom stop seeing it as an enemy. They embrace it as an ally who isn't always kind, but always loyal. Because discipline doesn't lie. It gives you exactly what you give it. If you give it little, you receive little. If you give it everything, it returns it to you multiplied. The next time you think discipline is too rigid for you, ask yourself if the life you have now is truly free, or if you're trapped in the chaos generated by your lack of order. Because true freedom isn't doing whatever you want at any time, but rather having control over yourself to create the life you want. And that only comes with discipline. Chapter 12, Patience as a Strategy. Patience isn't passivity. It's not sitting back and waiting for things to resolve themselves. It's not resignation or a lack of ambition. Patience is strategy, because it understands that not everything worthwhile is built immediately, and that sometimes the fastest way to get there is to move forward slowly, but surely. We live in an age that glorifies immediacy. We want results in hours, changes in days, achievements in weeks. Impatience makes us believe that if something takes too long, it's because it's failing. And under that pressure, many give up just before the process begins to bear fruit. Patience, on the other hand, knows that time is part of the plan, not an obstacle. Being patient doesn't mean not acting. It means acting without desperation. It means moving with intention, without jumping the gun, without forcing what isn't yet ready. Patience knows that roots grow silently long before the first leaf appears. It knows that rushing something can destroy it. Impatience confuses speed with progress. It makes you rush in the wrong direction. It pushes you to make decisions that ease the moment but sabotage the future. Patience, on the other hand, focuses on direction, not haste. It prefers to take firm steps that support what is to come. Patience is also emotional control, because waiting without anxiety requires mastery of your mind. Desperation leads you to seek shortcuts, and shortcuts often cost dearly. Patience knows that no shortcut is worth it if it compromises the solidity of the result. Practice, recall. Think of a goal that truly matters to you. Set a realistic time frame for achieving it, one that includes time for mistakes, pauses, and learning. Then commit to not giving up before that deadline, even if the progress seems small. Train yourself to resist the temptation to seek immediate results and focus on daily consistency. Patience also teaches you to let go of absolute control. You can't rush what isn't solely within your control. You can't force others to change on your timeline. You can't force all conditions to be perfect. Patience reminds you that some things mature when they're meant to, and your job is to be ready when that happens. Many see patience as a waste of time. They believe that waiting is a waste of opportunities. But in reality, impatience is what steals opportunities, because it causes you to act before you're ready, or to take paths that don't lead you where you want to go. Patience isn't waiting idly. It's using that time to strengthen yourself, learn, and plan. The problem with impatience is that it's rarely satisfied. When you achieve what you wanted quickly, you soon want the next thing, and then the next thing. You live in an endless race that never lets you enjoy it. Patience trains you to savor the process, to find value in every step, not just the finish line. Patience is also a decision filter. When something is truly good for you, it will continue to be so after a while. If your enthusiasm for an idea fades when you can't have it right away, maybe it wasn't that important. Patience cuts through the noise of what was just a whim. Don't confuse patience with inaction. Patience doesn't wait for no reason. It waits because it's building, because it's sowing, because it knows that every move has an optimal moment. Those who know how to wait don't waste time, they invest time. Being patient is also an act of strength in a fast-paced world. It means resisting the pressure of comparing yourself to others' progress. It means remembering that your pace doesn't have to match anyone else's. Impatience is born of comparison. Patience is born of clarity. Patience also protects you from regret. Many impulsive decisions are born from the discomfort of waiting. We want to make a decision now, even if it's the worst option, just to relieve the tension of the moment. But when you act this way, you often end up wishing you'd waited a little longer to make a better choice. With patience, you can sustain processes that others find unbearable. You can stand firm when circumstances seem unmoving. You can resist the urge to destroy what you're building just because it's not growing at the pace you want. And that ability puts you ahead of those who give up at the first difficulty. Patience is also long-term vision. Those who are patient aren't seduced by small rewards that jeopardize larger ones. They know that not everything is worth it now if it means losing something more valuable later. Patience chooses with foresight. Recall practice. The next time you feel the urge to resolve something quickly, ask yourself, is this decision to relieve my anxiety now or to improve my situation in the long term? If the answer is the former, consider waiting. If it's the latter, act, but do so calmly and with planning. Being patient doesn't mean you'll never feel frustration. You will, and a lot. But patience isn't the absence of frustration. It's the ability to not let that frustration cause you to act against yourself. It's recognizing discomfort without allowing it to dominate you. Over time, patience becomes a competitive advantage. While others waste energy jumping from one thing to another, you're steadily moving forward, accumulating results that don't crumble at the first blow. Patience builds foundations. Impatience builds sandcastles. Patience isn't something you achieve once and keep forever. It's a constant practice. There will be times when you want to speed things up, when waiting seems unbearable. That's where it all comes down to whether patience is just a nice word or a real strategy. The day you understand that patience doesn't slow you down but rather positions you, you stop seeing it as a sacrifice. You begin to value it as a resource, and you discover that the real rush isn't arriving quickly, but arriving prepared. Chapter 13. Silence as an answer. Not everything deserves a response. Not every provocation needs a retort. Not every opinion deserves your energy. Silence, well used, is more powerful than any argument, because it disarms those who expect a reaction and protects your peace from the constant erosion of the unnecessary. We live in a world where reaction is immediate. Social media, messages, and the pressure to respond quickly have led us to believe that silence means losing, that responding is always a duty. But silence isn't defeat, it's a choice. It's the filter that decides what's worthwhile and what isn't. Silence is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for those who were looking to fight, for those hoping to manipulate you, for those who wanted you to waste energy explaining the obvious. It's uncomfortable because it breaks the game. Most conflicts are sustained because both sides continue to fuel the exchange. When you choose not to respond, there is no exchange, and without exchange, the conflict either dies down or reveals itself for what it is, useless noise. Silence doesn't mean cowardice. It's not a lack of arguments or a weakness in defending yourself. It's having the strength not to engage in battles that aren't worth the price. It's recognizing that your time and energy are limited resources, and that wasting them on someone who doesn't listen is like watering a plastic plant. There are truths that don't need to be defended because they stand on their own. Wasting words to convince someone who doesn't want to understand is like shouting at a wall. Silence in such cases is an act of intelligence. Practice recall. The next time someone provokes you, ask yourself if your response will change anything or just fuel the moment. If it won't contribute anything, remain silent. Observe what happens. Often, the outcome will be more favorable than any speech you could have given. Silence is also protection. Not everything you think should be said. Not everyone deserves access to your plans, your weaknesses, your wounds. Sharing too much with someone who doesn't intend to care about what they hear is an invitation to harm. Silence keeps closed the doors you don't want others to cross. In arguments, silence empowers you. While the other person tires out talking, you observe, listen, and choose your moments. Responding from a calm position is more strategic than responding impulsively. And often, after a moment of silence, you realize you don't even need to respond. Silence also breaks the chain of emotional reaction. When something irritates you, the first thing your ego wants to do is respond. Silence forces you to wait, to let the emotion subside, to respond clearly rather than angrily. And sometimes when the emotion subsides, you discover that the response is no longer necessary. You won't always be able to remain silent. There are times when speaking is a duty, when silence would be complicity or injustice. The key is knowing when silence is wisdom and when it is omission. Silence as a response is powerful when it's used to avoid exhaustion, not to evade responsibility. Silence is also a tool for observation. When you don't speak, you can listen more and better. And by listening more, you see things that others, busy talking, don't notice. Silence allows you to read gestures, tones, hidden intentions. It makes you more aware of the game being played around you. In personal relationships, silence can be a limit. There are conversations that aren't worth having over and over again. There are people who only want to argue to win, not to understand. In those cases, silence is a wall that protects your energy. It's not coldness, it's self-care. In today's world, overexposure is the norm. Everyone has an opinion, everyone reacts, everyone shares. Choosing silence is almost an act of rebellion. It's deciding that you don't need constant validation, that you don't have to be in every conversation, that not everything you think needs to be published. Practice recall. For one whole day, choose not to express an opinion on anything that isn't essential. Listen more than you talk. Notice how this changes your perception of things and how it affects the way others interact with you. Silence is also a form of self-respect. When you stop engaging in pointless arguments, you're saying to yourself, "My peace is worth more than winning this point." And when you stop giving unnecessary explanations, you recognize that your life doesn't need external approval to be valid. But silence isn't always easy. It requires tolerating the void left by a lack of response. It requires avoiding the trap of having the last word. It requires trusting that not reacting now doesn't mean losing, but winning on a deeper level. Silence, when used well, gives you more control than you would have if you were talking non-stop, because whoever controls the pace of the conversation controls the interaction. And silence is the most powerful pause there is. It's also a clear signal to yourself. When you choose silence, you remind yourself that you don't have to react to everything, that you can live without fighting every battle, that your energy has value and not everything is worth consuming. Silence, like any tool, can be misused. There are those who remain silent out of fear, submission, or habit. This silence doesn't liberate, it shackles. The silence we're talking about here is one born of conscious choice, not fear. In a world that rewards immediate reaction, silence is a sign of self-control. You don't need to react to prove you exist. You don't need to express an opinion to have value. You don't need to respond to make your point real. Learning to use silence as a response won't make you immune to provocation, but it will make you the master of your reaction. And in a world constantly seeking your attention, that's immensely powerful. Chapter 14. The Power of Saying No. Saying no is one of the most powerful skills you can develop, but also one of the most difficult. From a young age, we're taught to please, to adapt, to avoid conflict. We're told that being good means saying yes, that pleasing others is the right thing to do, that being available is a virtue. And without realizing it, we grow up believing that saying no is an act of selfishness, when in reality, it's an act of honesty and self-respect. The problem with saying yes to everything is that you end up saying no to yourself. Every time you agree to something you don't want to do, can't sustain, or isn't aligned with your values, you're giving up your time, your energy, and your freedom, and that repeated over and over again leaves you exhausted, resentful, and disconnected from what truly matters. Saying no doesn't always feel comfortable. It can cause discomfort, both in you and in the person receiving it. But the discomfort of saying no is temporary. The discomfort of living a life full of unwanted commitments is permanent. If you have to choose between brief annoyance and constant weariness, choose the former. Saying no is setting clear boundaries. It's telling the world, this is as far as I go, and from here on out, it's my space. Boundaries aren't walls to isolate you. They're gates you control to decide who and what enters your life. Without boundaries, anyone can enter, and when anyone can enter, you lose control of your own territory. Recall practice. Make a list of 3 things you've said yes to in the last month that you didn't really want to do. Ask yourself why you agreed. Was it because you were afraid of disappointing to avoid conflict, or because you felt obligated? Then, commit to saying no the next time a similar situation arises, respectfully, but without overly justifying it. Saying no doesn't mean being rude or aggressive. You don't have to give long explanations or make up elaborate excuses. A clear no, said firmly and respectfully, is enough. The more you justify your refusal, the more room you give them to try to convince you to change your mind. There will be people who won't accept your no well because they've grown accustomed to your availability. And when you set a boundary, they'll feel it as a loss, even if that boundary is fair and necessary. Don't mistake their discomfort for your guilt. Their discomfort is part of the adjustment everyone must make when learning to value themselves. Saying no is also a way of protecting the quality of your yeses. When you say yes to everything, your word loses its weight. But when your yes is selective, it becomes a real commitment, something you consciously choose and can sustain with energy and conviction. It's not a focusing tool. Every time you reject something that isn't aligned with your priorities, you reinforce what does matter. Your time and attention are limited. Spending them on things that don't add up is like trying to fill a container with a hole in the bottom. Saying no is especially important in a world that glorifies being busy. Many people confuse activity with productivity, filling their schedules with irrelevant tasks just to feel important. It filters out the superficial and leaves room for the essential. And you also have to learn to say no to yourself. It's not just about rejecting what others ask for, but also about curbing your own impulses that keep you from what you want. Saying no to procrastination, to excess, to distractions, to excuses. That internal no is the most difficult, but also the most transformative. There will be times when saying no will cause you to miss out on opportunities, people, or situations that seem appealing at the moment. But if those opportunities depend on you sacrificing your well-being or your principles, they aren't real opportunities. They're traps in disguise. Saying no is a constant exercise in clarity. If you're not clear about what you want, it will be difficult to know what to say no to. So, before practicing saying no, practice knowing yourself. The clearer you are about your goals, your values, and your limits, the easier it will be to identify what doesn't fit. Saying no is also an act of courage. It requires facing the fear of being misunderstood, rejected, or criticized. It requires trusting that your worth doesn't depend on the approval of others. It requires accepting that not everyone will agree with you and that that's okay. Practice recall. The next time you're asked to do something you don't want to do, breathe before you answer. Don't automatically say yes. Take a moment to consider whether you really want to do it, whether you can do it without compromising what's important to you, and whether it's consistent with your values. If the answer is no, say so. Without guilt, without unnecessary justification. Saying no gives you time back, and the time you regain becomes energy for what really matters. At first, you may feel selfish for reserving it for yourself, but you'll soon see that time invested in the essentials has a much greater impact than wasting time on trivial matters. It's also important to understand that every no you say is a yes to something else. When you reject a commitment that doesn't benefit you, you're saying yes to your rest, your peace, your important work, your meaningful relationships. No isn't just a denial, it's an affirmation of what you truly want to sustain. Over time, it stops being a struggle and becomes a healthy habit. You learn to use it as a natural resource without feeling like you have to justify every decision. And you discover that people who truly respect you don't dismiss your value for saying no, but rather understand it as a sign of integrity. The power to say no is the power to live an intentional life, to stop living on autopilot, to stop being dragged by what others want, and to start building from what you choose. Because a life full of forced yeses is a half-life. A life with clear no's is a whole life. Chapter 15. The courage to be alone. Being alone is not the same as feeling lonely. Solitude as a choice is a place of strength. Solitude as abandonment is a place of emptiness. The problem is that many confuse the two and shy away from any moment alone as if it were a threat. But those who don't know how to be alone will never be able to choose well who to be with. The fear of loneliness causes us to accept mediocre company, maintain tired relationships, and surround ourselves with constant noise so we don't hear our own voice. Thus, we end up living lives that don't belong to us, just to avoid the silence that confronts us with ourselves. Learning to be alone is learning not to depend, not depending on external validation to feel worthy, not depending on company to feel complete, not depending on approval to follow your path. It's knowing that you can sustain yourself even if no one is supporting you. Chosen solitude isn't hostile isolation, it's a conscious retreat. It's the space where you can think without distractions, feel without masks, and plan without external pressures. It's the place where you can face who you are without anyone distorting it. Practice recall. Dedicate a day to being with yourself without seeking external distractions. No phone, no social media, no filling every minute with noise. Listen to what arises in your mind and body. Notice if there is discomfort, and instead of running away from it, stay there. Discomfort is often just a sign that you're not used to listening to yourself. Those who don't know how to be alone tend to say yes to any company, even if that company is harmful. Loneliness becomes a prison only when you haven't learned to live with it. But when you understand it, it becomes a refuge where you recharge your energy and gain clarity. Being alone is also an opportunity to truly get to know yourself. When there are no outside voices weighing in on everything you do, you can identify which decisions are truly yours and which ones you've made just to fit in. Time alone filters what's yours from what's imposed on you. Solitude as a value gives you emotional independence. It doesn't mean you don't want or need others, but rather that your well-being isn't tied to their constant presence. It's the difference between sharing by choice and sharing out of dependency. Solitude is also a training in patience. When you're alone, there are no distractions to obscure the passage of time. You're forced to live in the moment, to be present, to confront boredom without escaping it. And there you discover that boredom is merely a gateway to creativity and introspection. In a world that glorifies constant connection, choosing solitude is an act of rebellion. It's saying, I don't need to be available all the time to be valuable. It's rejecting the idea that constant noise is synonymous with a fulfilling life. Solitude is also the place where you can rebuild yourself after a loss. When everything falls apart, it's in solitude that you find the space to process, to grieve, to heal. It's there where you can put the pieces back together without the pressure of acting okay. Recall, practice, and make a list of the things you enjoy doing alone. It doesn't matter if they're simple activities like walking, reading, writing, or cooking. Take time to do them without seeking company. Notice how your relationship with them changes when there are no external witnesses or expectations. Solitude allows you to see who truly adds to your life. When you know how to be alone, you stop accepting relationships out of necessity and start accepting relationships based on affinity. You no longer settle for just any company because you know you can be fine on your own. Being alone is also a filter against manipulation. When you don't fear being alone, it's harder for someone to use that fear to control you. Emotional independence is an antidote to many forms of abuse. Solitude doesn't mean giving up on relationships, it means entering them from a healthier place without demanding that the other fill your voids. When you don't ask someone to be your lifeline, you can enjoy the relationship for what it is, not for what you expect it to give you. Some people confuse loneliness with selfishness, as if seeking time for oneself were an offense. But time alone doesn't distance you from others. It prepares you to be better with them. The difference between someone who seeks company to escape from themselves and someone who seeks it to share their fulfillment is abysmal. Over time, you learn that solitude isn't an empty place, but a space filled with possibilities. It's where you can create, reflect, learn, and grow without interruption. It's where you can hear the ideas you wouldn't have in the midst of noise. The value of being alone also lies in the fact that it gives you back control over your life. When you don't need others to approve every step, you can make riskier, more authentic, and more aligned decisions. Because you're not acting to avoid being alone, you're acting to truly live. Being alone isn't always comfortable, especially at first, but the initial discomfort is the price of freedom. Once you pass that point, solitude becomes a resource, not an enemy. And then, You no longer accept any noise just to avoid silence. In a world that fears loneliness, mastering it is a superpower. It's knowing that even when everyone else leaves, you can stay with yourself and still be standing. It's recognizing that ultimately the journey is personal and that your best ally on that journey is you. Chapter 16. The Uncomfortable Honesty. Honesty is easy when what you have to say is pleasant. The challenge is being honest when you know what you're about to say will make someone uncomfortable, disappoint them, or even upset them. Most people don't lie out of malice, but to avoid the burden of conflict, to maintain a semblance of harmony, or to avoid the other person's reaction. But the truth, even if it hurts, is always a more solid foundation than the kindest lie. Uncomfortable honesty isn't gratuitous brutality. It's not about speaking your mind without filter or care, as if sincerity were a license to hurt. It's about speaking clearly and respectfully, but without disguising the facts to make them easier to digest. It's about understanding that over-softening the truth often dilutes it to the point of being useless. The problem with avoiding uncomfortable honesty is that you end up building fragile relationships. Relationships that are sustained only by avoiding certain topics, by pretending to agree, by hiding your true opinions. But what's left unsaid accumulates, and sooner or later it explodes. Recall practice. Think of a conversation you've avoided for fear of making others uncomfortable. Ask yourself what would happen if you said what you truly felt, unadorned but not aggressive. Then, assess whether the silence is costing you more than the potential conflict. Often what we're afraid to say is what most urgently needs to be said. Uncomfortable honesty is also a filter. When you speak your mind and feelings clearly, not everyone will accept it. And that's okay. Someone who can't handle your truth probably isn't ready to build something genuine with you. Someone who is will value your openness even if they don't agree with you. Being honest when it's difficult requires courage because it means relinquishing control over others' reactions. You can't guarantee that the other person will take it well, that they won't get angry, that they won't walk away. Telling the truth means accepting that you may lose things, but also that anything you gain afterward will be more real. Many people confuse uncomfortable honesty with pessimism or negativity. They're not the same thing. Telling someone something isn't working isn't destroying. It's preventing it from destroying them in the future. Staying silent out of fear of immediate discomfort is a recipe for much bigger problems down the road. Uncomfortable honesty isn't just directed toward others, it's also directed toward yourself. It's looking in the mirror and recognizing the parts of yourself you don't want to see. It's accepting that you're not always doing your best, that sometimes you procrastinate, sometimes you run away, sometimes you settle. You can't change what you deny, and denying it just because it's uncomfortable is self-sabotage. In professional settings, uncomfortable honesty is essential to avoid costly mistakes. A team that doesn't dare speak up when something goes wrong will end up facing avoidable crises. A leader who doesn't receive honest feedback becomes a blind leader. The cost of silence is always greater than the cost of discomfort. Recall practice. For 1 week, observe how many times you soften or avoid a truth to make it more palatable. Ask yourself if this modification helps the situation or only delays it. Commit to saying, at least once a day, something that is true even if it's uncomfortable, taking care of the form but without altering the substance. Uncomfortable honesty also teaches humility because it forces you to accept that others are practicing it with you. If you want to surround yourself with people who tell you the truth, you have to be willing to listen without immediately defending yourself. It's not always pleasant, but it's the fastest path to real improvement. The most common fear of uncomfortable honesty is the fear of loss, of losing a friendship, a relationship, an opportunity. But if what you have depends on hiding essential truths, you don't really have it. You're just renting it. And rentals always have an expiration date. Being honest about uncomfortable situations is an act of respect. Respect for yourself, because you don't betray yourself in exchange for acceptance. Respect for others, because you give them the opportunity to decide with the truth on the table. When you hide what you know matters, you're not protecting, you're controlling. And control sooner or later turns into manipulation. It's also important to understand that uncomfortable honesty doesn't guarantee that everything will be fixed. Telling the truth may not change the situation, but it will always change your position in it. It frees you from the burden of carrying what you didn't say. It allows you to walk with your head held high, knowing that you acted with integrity. With practice, uncomfortable honesty stops feeling like a leap into the dark and starts feeling like emotional hygiene. Just as brushing your teeth prevents dirt from accumulating, speaking your truth prevents resentments from festering. The price of remaining silent for convenience is high. Strained relationships, failed projects, eroded self-esteem. The price of telling the truth can also be high, but it's a one-time payment. After that, you build on solid ground. Uncomfortable honesty also builds trust. Even if it hurts, people learn that your words carry weight, that what you say is real. They prefer a meaningful yes and a definitive no to a complacent speech that crumbles at the first hurdle. There will be times when uncomfortable honesty closes doors, but they're doors that led to places where you couldn't be yourself anyway. And every door that closes leaves room for one that's yours to open. I take this moment to tell you that if what you see resonates with you, in the first link in the description, you will find much more material to continue learning. Chapter 17. Discipline that does not rely on motivation. Motivation is volatile. One day you have it and think nothing can stop you. The next it's gone and everything seems uphill. If you base your actions solely on motivation, you'll be trapped in a cycle of enthusiastic starts and silent abandonments. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is the fire that remains when the spark goes out. Many people wait for inspiration to take action, as if the impulse were an indispensable requirement. But the truth is that waiting for motivation is waiting for permission. And the world won't give you permission every day. There will be mornings when you don't want to get up, afternoons when you'd rather relax, and nights when tiredness will ask you to give up. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel, it simply acts. Discipline that doesn't depend on motivation is based on decisions, not emotions. Decisions made in advance, not renegotiated every time discomfort arises. It's a commitment to a personal standard, even when doing so isn't pleasant. Recall practice. Identify an action you want to turn into a habit. Write it down as a commitment, not a wish. I do this every day, instead of I want to do this. Then, do it even when you don't feel like it, even if it's in the smallest possible way. Repetition, not motivation, is what will solidify it. Discipline is a form of self-respect. It's following through on what you said you would do long after you've lost the desire that made you promise it. It's understanding that consistent effort produces results that motivation alone can't sustain. Motivation seeks immediate pleasure. Discipline looks further ahead. It means getting up to train when you'd rather sleep, studying when you'd rather go out, saving when you'd rather spend. Not because it's the most pleasurable thing to do at the time, but because it's what builds the long-term results you want. Discipline can also be trained. No one is born with an iron will. It starts with small actions and grows stronger with repetition. At first, simply completing an uncomfortable task is a victory. Over time, discomfort stops feeling like an obstacle and becomes a natural part of the process. The most common mistake is to believe that discipline is something rigid and inflexible that only belongs to exceptional people. In reality, discipline is a daily choice that anyone can make, although few are willing to pay the price. And the price is simple: act even when you don't want to. On unmotivated days, the mind searches for excuses. I'll start tomorrow. It's not the right time. I need to wait until I feel ready. Discipline nips those excuses in the bud and focuses on action. Because every time you give in to an excuse, you strengthen the habit of giving up. Recall practice. For 1 week, deliberately do something uncomfortable every day. Not for the result, but for the mental training. It might be waking up an hour earlier, finishing a pending task you've been avoiding, or working out even when you're tired. This exercise reminds you that you don't need to feel ready to act. Discipline also frees you from emotional dependence. If you only act when you feel good, your life is at the mercy of your moods. But if you act regardless of your mood, your results cease to be accidental and become predictable. Some people confuse discipline with senseless sacrifice. It's not about suffering for the sake of suffering, but rather prioritizing what builds over what destroys. Sometimes choosing discipline means saying no to something that seems more appealing at the moment, but that distances you from what you truly want. Discipline that doesn't rely on motivation also teaches you to trust yourself. Every time you keep a commitment, even on difficult days, you reinforce the idea that you can count on yourself. That confidence is more powerful than any motivational speech. In today's world, everyone is looking for shortcuts, programs that promise quick results, methods that eliminate effort, hacks that supposedly replace consistency. But the truth remains the same. Nothing replaces discipline. What you build with discipline lasts. What you achieve with motivation alone fades as soon as the excitement fades. Discipline doesn't depend on external inspiration. It doesn't require others to applaud you, recognize you, or tell you you're doing well. It's an internal force that fuels your commitment to your own word. Motivation may be an initial impulse, but it's not the engine that drives you to your goal. Practice recall. Every time you accomplish something you didn't want to do but did anyway, acknowledge it as a victory. Don't minimize the action because it was small. Discipline is built on those small battles won. Discipline that doesn't depend on motivation is silent. It doesn't advertise itself. It doesn't seek attention. It's that person who trains at 5 in the morning without uploading a photo, who works on their project even if no one sees them, who quietly fulfills their commitments. The results speak for themselves. There will be days when discipline feels like a burden, when you don't see immediate progress. Those are the most important days because they strengthen your resilience. Anyone can take action when everything is in flux. Few act when it seems nothing is changing. Motivation pushes you forward, but discipline drags you along if necessary. It's not as glamorous as sudden inspiration, but it's what gets you through when the urge fades. And it always does. When you stop depending on motivation, you stop waiting for perfect conditions to act. You start working with what you have where you are, without waiting for the desire to strike, because you understand that desire is a luxury, action is a necessity. Chapter 18, The Art of Not Taking Anything Personally. Taking things personally is like drinking poison and hoping the other person will feel the pain. It's carrying a burden that isn't yours and letting other people's opinions, attitudes, or reactions define your worth. Most of the time, what people say or do speaks more about them than it does about you. But when you take it personally, you act as if everything is a direct judgment on your existence. The truth is, people project. Their words, their actions, their criticisms, and even their contempt are filtered by their experiences, their fears, their beliefs, and their wounds. You are not the center of anyone else's universe. What they say and do is a reflection of how they see the world, not who you really are. When you take something personal, you give away your power. You hand your peace of mind over to someone else and give them control over how you feel. It's like letting a stranger decide how well you'll sleep tonight. It's not that what they do can't affect you, but you can choose how deeply you let it in. Practice remembering it. The next time someone says or does something that upsets you, ask yourself, is this really about me or about them? That simple question puts distance between you and the situation, and that distance is the first step toward not taking it personally. Not taking anything personally doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means not reacting automatically to every stimulus. It means evaluating whether it's worth letting something invade your mind and heart. It means choosing your battles and often deciding there's no battle to fight. When someone criticizes you without foundation, they're not describing the truth. They're describing their own truth. If you accept it as an absolute fact, you make their perception your reality. But if you view it as a subjective opinion, you lose the impulse to defend or justify yourself. People act according to their levels of consciousness. Someone who lives in insecurity will likely be aggressive to protect their ego. Someone who lives in fear will try to control. Someone who lives in deprivation will see threats where there aren't any. None of this is personal, even if it sometimes seems that way. Recall practice. Make a list of 3 times you took something personally and over time discovered it wasn't about you. Read it every time you feel hurt by someone's reaction. It will remind you that much of what you believe is directed at you is merely a reflection of what someone else is experiencing. Not taking anything personally also means not relying on praise to make you feel worthwhile. If you let praise elevate you too much, You'll also let criticism tear you down. Emotional stability is built when neither the good nor the bad things others say change your focus. There will be times when someone's comment or action does relate to you, but even then, you can choose to receive it as information, not as an attack. Ask yourself if there's anything useful you can learn and let go of the rest. Not everything that's true needs to become a wound. Social media has made it easier to take everything personally. A negative comment can feel like a public declaration of your worth, but remember that on the other end is someone with their own personal experience, often speaking from anonymity and frustration. If you wouldn't accept their advice in private, don't bear their judgment in public. Not taking anything personally requires practice because the ego wants to defend itself. The ego wants to be right, wants approval, wants to always be respected. But if you get caught up in every offense, your energy is dispersed in wars that produce nothing. True strength lies in choosing when to respond and when to let go. Recall practice. Whenever you feel attacked, imagine the other person's words or a ball being thrown at you. You can either catch it or let it fall. Not taking it personally means letting it fall and moving on. Not taking anything personally doesn't mean tolerating abuse. It means not taking on emotional burdens. If someone crosses a boundary, you can address it without their behavior becoming an internal wound. You can act assertively without being held back by resentment. It also means stopping assuming that everything people do is a reaction to you. Someone may be distant because they're dealing with their own issues, not because you've done anything wrong. Someone may be irritable because of a bad day, not because they want to hurt you. You are not the script for someone else's life. When you understand this, you become freer. You no longer react to every provocation. You no longer exhaust yourself trying to explain or correct other people's perceptions. You discover that much of your suffering stems from trying to control what others think and feel about you. And that's impossible. Not taking anything personally also preserves your energy for what truly matters. If every comment or gesture from others drags you into internal conflict, you'll be exhausted. But if you let go of the irrelevant, you'll have more space to build what truly nourishes you. Over time, you learn that life feels lighter when you stop carrying others' projections, that you don't need to win every argument or clear up every misunderstanding, that sometimes the best response is silence, and the best defense is not to play the game. The art of not taking anything personally isn't about hardening yourself, but about freeing yourself from the prison of other people's opinions, emotional dependence, and unnecessary drama. It's about remembering that the only thing that's truly personal is how you choose to live and respond. Chapter 19. Patience as a Strategy. Patience isn't passivity. It's not sitting still and waiting for life to resolve itself. Patience is a strategy of resilience. It's the ability to sustain a goal, an effort, or a vision, even when results don't appear immediately. It's not about doing nothing. It's about continuing to do what's necessary without giving in to despair for quick rewards. We live in a world that worships the instantaneous. Instant messages, one-day deliveries, results in weeks. This culture has confused speed with efficiency, as if what is valuable must arrive immediately. Patience is the opposite. It's understanding that what is profound, solid, and worthwhile always takes time. Impatience is the trap of believing that the internal rhythm of your desires must match the external rhythm of life. When this doesn't happen, many give up or look for shortcuts that compromise the outcome. Patience, on the other hand, accepts that time is part of the process, not an enemy to be overcome. Recall practice. The next time you feel frustrated because something isn't moving as quickly as you'd like, stop and ask yourself, is what I'm doing right? If the answer is yes, keep going. Don't adjust your path just because the results haven't arrived yet. Patience isn't resignation. It's not accepting a mediocre life with the excuse that everything comes in its own time. It's working consistently without interrupting the process whenever you feel anxious about seeing results. It's trusting in the invisible accumulation of your effort. Many people confuse patience with a lack of ambition. The truth is, patience is sustained ambition. Anyone can get excited at the start of a project, but only those who practice patience can navigate the wilderness of delay without losing their direction. Patience is also a filter for your priorities. If something isn't worth waiting for, it's probably not worth getting. What's valuable stands the test of time. What's superficial loses interest when it doesn't arrive quickly. The world rewards apparent speed, but often speed is pure movement without direction. Patience ensures that every step is intentional. It doesn't ask you to stop, but rather to move forward with your gaze fixed beyond the present moment. Recall practice. Keep track of something you're building, but record progress weekly or monthly, not daily. This will train you to recognize progress on broader scales, where impatience has less power. Patience is also an act of emotional maturity. Those who lack it seek immediate gratification to soothe discomfort. Those who develop it tolerate discomfort as a natural part of any important goal. This tolerance is what prevents them from giving up when the initial enthusiasm fades. In human relationships, patience is the space you give others to grow at their own pace. You can't force someone to learn a lesson or change their mindset on your schedule. Impatience with others often destroys bonds that, given time, would have flourished. Patience is also a tool of power. In negotiations, those who know how to wait get better terms than those who rush to close a deal quickly. In conflicts, those who wait for the right moment to act have a greater advantage than those who react immediately. Practice recall. In your next discussion, delay your response a few seconds longer than usual. This pause will allow you to respond strategically rather than reacting impulsively. Impatience pushes you to accept less than you deserve. Patience allows you to wait until what you receive aligns with what you truly want. This applies to jobs, relationships, opportunities, and important decisions. Patience doesn't mean a lack of urgency. It means distinguishing between acting quickly and acting hastily. A hasty decision may save you time today, but cost you much more tomorrow. With patience, you learn to respect the rhythm of natural cycles. Just as a seed needs time to germinate and a muscle needs rest to grow, any goal requires periods of rest to consolidate. Failing to respect these cycles is like trying to force a harvest before its time. The result will be weak. Patience also protects your energy. Impatience is draining because it keeps you constantly frustrated, evaluating what's missing instead of appreciating what's already happening. Patience, on the other hand, allows you to focus on the present while still working toward the future. Don't confuse patience with letting opportunities pass you by. Patience isn't just sitting back, it's acting consistently while you wait for the result to ripen. It's the difference between sowing and sitting back and staring at the ground, and sowing while you continue to water, clean, and care for the soil. Recall practice. Think of an important goal you've achieved in the past. Recall how long it took and how many times you thought about giving up. Use that memory as evidence that the time you invest now can bring greater results than you imagine. Patience, when properly understood, makes you more resilient to frustration. Not because you ignore the difficulty, but because you understand it's part of the journey. You stop interpreting delay as failure and begin to see it as part of the journey. Over time, patience becomes a competitive advantage. Most people give up too soon, not you. Most people change course at the first hurdle, not you. And while others waste energy starting over and over again, you're already closer to the finish line. Patience as a strategy is a declaration of faith in your own efforts. It's saying, I'm willing to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes. And that willingness, more than talent or luck, is what defines those who finish what they start. Chapter 20. The Power of Saying No. Saying no is one of the most powerful skills you can develop, and also one of the hardest to practice. We grow up with the idea that saying yes is being kind, helpful, and accepted. But saying yes without measure is a recipe for a life that's exhausted, cluttered, and driven by other people's agendas. The power of saying no isn't in the rejection itself, but in what it protects: your time, your energy, your purpose, and your integrity. Every time you say yes to something you don't want to do, you're saying no to something that's important to you. And the most dangerous thing is that you often don't realize you're trading your priorities for someone else's. The time you spend pleasing others never comes back. The energy you waste on commitments you don't want never comes back. The difficulty with saying no lies in fear of disappointing, of missing opportunities, of being seen as selfish. But the truth is that not setting clear boundaries not only harms your well-being, but also damages relationships in the long run. Those who always say yes end up accumulating resentment, and resentment is more destructive than any outright refusal. Practice recall. Before accepting any request, ask yourself, if I had to do it right now, would I say yes enthusiastically or just out of obligation? If the answer is the latter, your honest answer is probably no. Saying no firmly doesn't mean being aggressive. You can refuse something respectfully without unnecessary excuses. In fact, the simpler your refusal, the clearer your position will be. I can't. It's not possible right now. It's not something that aligns with my priorities. You don't have to justify every no with a list of reasons to convince the other person. A life without clear goals is filled with obligations you never chose. You wake up one day and discover you're fulfilling expectations that aren't yours, that your schedule is full of tasks that don't get you closer to anything you truly want. Saying no is the tool that allows you to build a life designed by you, not by external pressure. The power of saying no also applies to yourself. It's not just about rejecting external demands. It's about learning to say no to yourself when the temptation to sabotage yourself arises. Saying no to procrastination, no to distractions, no to habits that keep you from your goals. It's an act of self-control and self-love. Recall practice. Make a list of 3 things you need to say no to this week to protect your energy. These could be social engagements, unhealthy habits, or tasks that aren't really your thing. Commit to sticking to those no's, even if it's uncomfortable. No is also a statement of value. It means that your time is valuable, your energy is limited, and your purpose deserves priority. It means you don't sell yourself out for approval or give yourself away for fear of looking bad. Often, saying no opens up more opportunities than saying yes. When you reject what isn't for you, you make room for what is. But if your schedule is filled with the irrelevant, there won't be room for what truly matters. The power of saying no also lies in consistency. If your no's are inconsistent, people will learn that they can persist until you say yes. A true no holds up even in the face of pressure, manipulation, or guilt. Practice recall. The next time you're tempted to simply change a no to a yes to avoid discomfort, remember that every time you give in, you're training others not to take your boundaries seriously. Saying no is especially difficult with close people because the emotional bond increases the fear of conflict. But even in these cases, your no can be an act of respect. You respect the other person by being clear and honest, rather than agreeing to something you'll later do unwillingly or half-heartedly. Saying no is also necessary to protect your mental health. Accepting too much leads to burnout, and burnout makes you ineffective, irritable, and absent. In the end, you end up giving less, even to the things you wanted to give your best to. At work, saying no is an act of professionalism when it prevents you from becoming overloaded and delivering mediocre results. It's not rebellion. It's responsible management of your resources. Accepting more than you can handle just to appear committed is a strategy for failure. No isn't always definitive. Sometimes it's a not now or a not this way. Knowing how to qualify your refusal is also part of its strength. The important thing is not to compromise the essentials just to avoid a momentary reaction. Recall practice. Think of a time when saying no saved you from a commitment that would have been a problem. Keep that memory in mind when guilt tries to convince you to say yes in the future. Saying no is also a message to yourself that you have the right to choose, that your time is yours, that your life isn't meant to be managed by others. With every no you say, you strengthen your ability to live intentionally. The power of saying no increases with practice. At first, it may feel like a risk, but over time, you discover that people respect those who have clear boundaries more than those who say yes to everything. Because the yes of someone who knows how to say no doesn't carry more weight. Over time, you realize that not everything deserves your attention, your effort, or your presence. And that every sincere no you say brings you closer to a life you actually want to live. Chapter 21. The freedom to not be liked by everyone. Trying to please everyone is a slow path to self-destruction. It's living with your attention focused on what others think, while distancing yourself from who you truly are. No matter what you do, there will always be someone who disagrees, criticizes, doesn't understand, or simply doesn't connect with you. Freedom begins the day you accept that not being liked by everyone is inevitable. Constantly seeking approval turns you into an actor on the stage of other people's lives. You adjust your words, your gestures, your decisions to fit other people's expectations. And in the process, you lose authenticity. The problem isn't when people have opinions about you. The problem is when you live to manage them. The need to please is a prison disguised as virtue. It convinces you that being accepted is more important than being true, but when your worth depends on external acceptance, you become vulnerable to any rejection. It's like building your house on borrowed land. One day it can be taken away from you. Practice recall. When you feel pressure to perform to please, ask yourself, if no one were watching or giving their opinion, would I still do this? If the answer is no, then what you're seeking isn't self-satisfaction, but approval from others. The freedom to dislike everyone doesn't mean becoming indifferent or arrogant. It means not compromising your principles to gain sympathy. It means recognizing that your value doesn't increase with applause or decrease with criticism. There are those who won't accept you even if you do everything they expect, and there are those who will respect you precisely for not doing what they expect. In the end, the only thing you can control is your consistency, not the reactions of others. Trying to please everyone also distracts you. You end up investing energy in pleasing people who don't have a real place in your life, while neglecting those who do. The truth is, you don't need everyone to understand you. You only need those who are an essential part of your path to understand you. Practice recall. Make a list of the people whose opinions truly matter to you. If they're not on that list, their judgments shouldn't determine your decisions. Accepting that not everyone will like you and that not everyone will like you is a relief. It leaves room for everyone to be who they are without trying to mold themselves to fit in. It's a form of mutual respect. I'm not trying to change you, you're not trying to change me. The need for approval often stems from a fear of rejection, but rejection isn't the end. It's a natural filter. Every time someone walks away because you're not what they expected, they make room for someone who connects with who you really are to approach. Remembrance practice. Think of a time when someone left your life and over time that allowed you to connect with more like-minded people. This is proof that not everyone has to stay and not everyone has to approve of you. When you stop trying to please everyone, you reclaim your time and energy. You no longer spend hours thinking about what to say to avoid making others uncomfortable. Nor do you stay up all night analyzing every gesture to guess if someone is upset with you. Your mind clears when you stop relying on other people's approval. This freedom also allows you to be more honest. You don't have to disguise your opinions or hide your boundaries to avoid being seen in a certain way. Authenticity is uncomfortable for some, but it appeals to those who value truth more than convenience. Not being liked by everyone doesn't mean being confrontational for the sake of it. It means that your priority is being consistent with yourself, even when that means some won't agree. It's not wanton rebellion, it's respect for your own identity. Practice recall. In your next important conversation, say what you really think, not what you think the other person wants to hear. Notice how you feel afterward. That sense of clarity is worth more than any temporary approval. People who live trying to please often end up feeling empty, because deep down, they know that the appreciation they receive isn't for who they really are, but for the version they've fabricated to please. That mask becomes a heavy burden that sooner or later they'll want to drop. When you accept that not everyone will like you, you stop negotiating your worth. You don't raise or lower it based on others' reactions. And when that happens, your confidence stops depending on external factors. This emotional independence is a shield against manipulation and insecurity. This freedom also brings clarity to your relationships. You discover who appreciates you unconditionally and who will only be with you as long as you meet their expectations. That distinction is one of the greatest advantages of stopping trying to please everyone. Life's too short to spend it building an image that others will approve of. In the end, the people who truly matter are those you don't need to impress. And those people can only get to know you if you show yourself as you are, with all that entails. The freedom to displease everyone isn't for everyone. Some prefer the comfort of approval to the discomfort of authenticity. But if you choose freedom, you'll understand that living for yourself isn't selfishness, it's responsibility. Chapter 22, The Honesty That Discomforts. Honesty isn't always welcome. Most people like the idea of the truth until they're confronted with it unfiltered. The honesty that makes people uncomfortable is the kind that cuts through the layers of excuses, the kind that doesn't seek to embellish reality to make it easier to digest. It's not gratuitous brutality or cruelty disguised as candor. It's the commitment to say what's necessary, even if it's not what the other person wants to hear. We live in a culture that prefers the smoothness of lies to the harshness of truth. We've grown accustomed to exchanging false compliments, hiding our thoughts to avoid friction, and protecting other people's egos even if it means betraying our own voice. But uncomfortable honesty doesn't work that way. It doesn't seek the shortest path to good looks, but the most direct path to truth. The discomfort that the truth provokes is a sign that something within needs to be questioned or changed. Lies soothe, but they lull. Honesty awakens, even if it hurts. That's why many prefer to avoid it, because it demands movement, action, decisions. Practice remembering, before you hide the truth for fear of causing discomfort, ask yourself whether the silence you choose protects or limits. If what you keep quiet could prevent immediate harm but perpetuate a bigger problem, perhaps the discomfort of the truth is what's needed. Being honest doesn't mean saying everything that's on your mind without filtering. It means speaking with intention and purpose. Sometimes the most powerful honesty isn't the kind spoken out loud, but the kind communicated with a clear boundary or a consistent decision. The uncomfortable honesty is also directed inward. It's facing what you don't want to accept about yourself. Your contradictions, your fears, your failures, and your excuses. It's much easier to point out uncomfortable truths in others than to face them in the mirror. But without internal honesty, external honesty loses strength and credibility. Recall practice. Make a list of 3 things about yourself that you've been avoiding acknowledging. Not to beat yourself up, but to work on them. The honesty that makes you uncomfortable starts at home. People who value honesty aren't those who always smile when they hear it, but those who know how to process it. Some will be offended, others will walk away, but a few will appreciate that someone had the courage to not disguise the truth. And those few are the ones who truly matter. Telling the truth can cost you relationships, jobs, or comfort, but not telling it can cost you yourself. Every time you soften reality to fit in, you lose a bit of integrity. And integrity is like a muscle. It weakens if you don't use it. Practice recall. The next time you have to choose between the discomfort of speaking the truth or the comfort of saying what is expected, remember that the relief of avoiding conflict is temporary, but the consequence of betraying your voice is permanent. Honesty that makes you uncomfortable is also a form of love. Love for clarity, for genuine respect, for growth. Telling someone what they need to hear, even if it's difficult, is more valuable than allowing them to remain comfortable in their deception. Love that only protects is not complete. Love that also confronts is what transforms. But we must understand that honesty won't always be received immediately. Sometimes the initial reaction will be defensiveness, anger, or rejection. That doesn't mean it wasn't worth it. Many truths that hurt today are appreciated tomorrow. Uncomfortable honesty also serves as a filter. It will distance you from those who prefer to surround themselves with empty flattery and bring you closer to those seeking real relationships. If everyone around you agrees with you all the time, you probably aren't being honest, but rather complacent. Recall practice. Evaluate the 5 people you interact with most. Ask yourself if they're capable of telling you uncomfortable truths, and if you can do the same with them. If not, what you have aren't strong connections, but rather agreements of silence. Honesty doesn't always solve the problem immediately, but it always clarifies it. When things are clear, even if they're difficult, you can take action. When things are hidden or glossed over, the problem grows in the shadows. Being honest in a world that rewards diplomacy over truth requires courage. It requires accepting that being authentic won't always make you popular. But popularity is fragile. Consistency is not. The honesty that makes you uncomfortable is also a test of character. Speaking your mind when everyone agrees isn't difficult. Speaking it when you know you're going to face resistance is what makes the difference. And if you decide to remain silent to avoid conflict, remember that conflict doesn't go away. It's just postponed. Practice remembering. Before softening a truth for fear of a reaction, imagine that you're the one who needs to hear it. Would you rather have it told to you as it is, or have it hidden from you so as not to upset you? The honesty that makes you uncomfortable doesn't seek to humiliate, but to liberate. Because the truth, even when it hurts, opens paths that lies block. It won't always feel like a gift at first, but it is. Accepting this form of honesty means accepting that discomfort isn't the enemy. It's a sign that something real is happening. And if you choose to live in that truth, even if it's uncomfortable, you'll become freer than anyone who lives surrounded by empty approval. Chapter 23. The courage to be alone. Being alone isn't the same as feeling empty. Loneliness isn't always a lack, it's often a resource. We live surrounded by noise, notifications, and voices telling us who we should be and what we should want. In that environment, learning to be alone is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. Not because you should isolate yourself from the world, but because you need to know who you are when the world isn't looking. Many people flee from loneliness as if it were a disease. They fill themselves with plans, superficial conversations, and constant distractions to avoid facing the silence that leaves them face to face with their own thoughts. The fear isn't of loneliness, but of what loneliness reveals. Insecurities, unresolved fears, questions that have no immediate answers. Being consciously alone is an act of courage. It means briefly relinquishing external validation and anesthetic company. It means giving yourself the space to think, to feel, to process without another voice interfering. This space is uncomfortable at first, but it's the ground where clarity grows. Recall practice. Dedicate 1 hour a week to being completely alone. No phone, no music, no screens. Just you, a quiet place, and your mind. Notice what appears when there are no distractions. Voluntary solitude is different from imposed solitude. The former is a choice, a temporary retreat to strengthen yourself. The latter is a circumstance that can be painful, but can also be transformed into an opportunity if you learn to view it as a space for personal growth. When you learn to be alone, you stop depending on others to feel complete. This doesn't mean you reject relationships. It means you don't cling to them for fear of being left with nothing. Emotional dependence is an invisible chain that conscious solitude can break. Recall practice. Think of a relationship or situation you stayed in only because you were afraid of being alone. Ask yourself if that fear led you to accept less than you deserved. Being alone also trains you to listen to your own voice. When you're always surrounded by people, it's easy to mistake other people's opinions for your own. In silence, you begin to recognize which thoughts are truly yours and which are echoes of others. Loneliness is a mirror. It reflects both what you like about yourself and what you avoid. If you run away from that mirror, you continue to act without knowing your true face. If you face it, you give yourself the opportunity to improve what you see and accept what you cannot change. In a world that celebrates hyperconnectivity, being alone is almost an act of rebellion. It's not about withdrawing forever, but rather about claiming moments where external noise doesn't compete with your attention. Those are the moments where the clearest decisions are made. Practice recall. Before making an important decision, spend time alone thinking about it. Don't ask for opinions. Don't seek approval. Listen to what you really want to do. Solitude also strengthens your emotional independence. When you know how to be alone, you don't settle for any company just to fill a space. You can wait for relationships that truly add value instead of accepting just anyone out of fear of emptiness. Solitude isn't the enemy of human connection. In fact, it improves the quality of your relationships. Those who know how to be alone don't burden others with the responsibility of making them happy. They enter into relationships by choice, not necessity. Recall practice. Make a list of the things you enjoy doing alone. Include both small and large activities. The more you practice this, the easier it will be to view solitude as a resource, not a punishment. Being alone is also a form of deep rest. Constant interaction, even with people you care about, drains energy. Silence and solitude allow that energy to recharge without external demands. But don't confuse loneliness with emotional isolation. Chronically isolating yourself to avoid pain is another form of escape. Valuable solitude is the kind you choose consciously and balanced, not the kind you use as a refuge from facing the world. Practice remembering. If you find yourself avoiding contact for too long, try the opposite exercise. Seek out meaningful interaction. The value of being alone also includes knowing when to stop being alone. Voluntary solitude is a training ground for resilience. It prepares you for the moments when life inevitably leaves you without company. Instead of falling into despair, you'll know how to sustain yourself. The truth is that sooner or later we all face loneliness. The difference is that those who have learned to be alone don't experience it as a tragedy, but rather as a temporary space to readjust and grow. Being alone allows you to reconnect with yourself honestly. You can ask yourself, am I living my life or the life others expect of me? That question, answered without outside influences, can change everything. Solitude, when you choose it, is freedom. Freedom from not being available to everyone at all times. Freedom to prioritize your time without guilt. Freedom to build yourself without the pressure of others' gazes. You don't need to fill every empty moment with noise. You don't need to fear silence. Solitude can be the place where you finally hear the answers, the noise kept from you. Chapter 24, Discipline as Freedom. Most people associate discipline with restriction, with rules that curtail freedom. But the opposite is true. Discipline is the foundation of true freedom. Without it, your decisions are governed by impulses, distractions, and momentary whims. Discipline is the bridge between what you want and what you actually achieve. Without that bridge, your goals remain unfulfilled wishes. Freedom without structure becomes chaos. You can do whatever you want, but if you don't have the strength to sustain your decisions, life pulls you in the direction of what's easiest, not what's best. Discipline gives you control over yourself, and that control is what allows you to choose with intention rather than reacting mindlessly. Discipline isn't something you have or don't have, it's something you train for. It starts with small resolutions that you stick to every day, even when you don't feel like it. It's not about motivation, because motivation is volatile. Discipline is what you do when motivation is gone. Practice recall. Choose a simple action that makes a difference in your life. It could be getting up at a regular time, exercising, reading, meditating, and commit to doing it for 30 days without fail. Don't negotiate with yourself. Discipline is also a form of self-respect. It means that you value yourself enough to keep your promises, even if no one is looking. When you break a promise you made to yourself, it doesn't matter if no one else knows, you know it, and that erodes your self-confidence. Those without discipline live as slaves to their emotions and moods. If you only act when you feel like it, you'll be held hostage to bad days and easy excuses. Discipline is the system that keeps you on course even when the internal climate is adverse. Practice recall. Before you break a commitment you made, ask yourself, am I choosing what I want now or what I want more? Discipline is uncomfortable, and that's why many avoid it. But that discomfort is temporary. The discomfort of lacking discipline is permanent. Unfinished projects, goals indefinitely postponed, potential never realized. Discipline is also clarity. Knowing what you're going to do and when you're going to do it eliminates confusion and the waste of energy trying to make decisions every time. It doesn't mean you can't be flexible, but the structure of discipline allows you to adapt without losing your way. Those who confuse freedom with always doing what they want end up trapped in habits that limit their options. For example, the freedom to eat whatever you want loses its appeal when your health deteriorates. The freedom to spend uncontrollably turns into anxiety when debt overwhelms you. Discipline is what keeps your possibilities open. Recall practice. Make a list of 3 areas of your life where a lack of discipline is robbing you of your freedom. Write down a specific habit you could implement to change that. Discipline doesn't mean absolute rigidity. It means having clear rules that support you, not chains that suffocate you. If it becomes punishment or excessive control, it ceases to be a tool and becomes a self-imposed prison. But most people never reach that extreme. The common problem isn't excessive discipline, but rather its complete lack. And without discipline, life becomes a series of emergencies that extinguish the fire of your goals. Discipline also builds resilience. Every time you stick to something you said you would do, you strengthen your ability to perform under pressure. That strength isn't achieved by reading about discipline, but by practicing it in the face of discomfort. Recall practice. When you feel like giving up on a task that matters, recall a time when persisting led to a worthwhile outcome. That memory is evidence that the discomfort is temporary, but the result endures. Discipline is the difference between an achievable goal and a dream that never leaves your head. Everyone has ideas, but few have the perseverance to bring them to life. Discipline turns intention into sustained action, and sustained action into results. Without discipline, even the greatest talent is wasted. There are people with extraordinary abilities who never achieve anything significant because they don't sustain sustained effort. And there are others with less natural talent who surpass everyone simply because they don't stop. Discipline doesn't require constant motivation, but it does require purpose. If you're not clear about why you're doing something, discipline becomes a burden. When your purpose is clear, discipline is a meaningful investment. Recall practice. Write a sentence that summarizes why it's worth maintaining your discipline in the area that matters most to you. Read it every time you feel like giving up. The freedom that discipline brings isn't immediate. It requires going through a period in which it seems you're restricting yourself. But in the long run, those restrictions are what allow you to move without chains. Those without discipline live limited by their impulses. Those with discipline choose when and how to act. Discipline also protects you from regret. Many people regret not what they did, but what they didn't do. Discipline is the assurance that, even if you fail, you did it with all your might. In a world that celebrates instant gratification, discipline is a rarity. But it's precisely that rarity that separates you from mediocrity. Most people give up when they don't see quick results. Discipline keeps you going until the results arrive. True freedom isn't always doing what you want, it's having the ability to do what's necessary, even when you don't want to. And that ability is only built through discipline. Chapter 25. Silence as a strength. In a world that screams constantly, silence is an act of strength. Most people think power lies in the word, in the most convincing argument, in the quickest answer. But true power often lies in knowing when to remain silent. Silence isn't empty, it's control. It's not a lack of response. It's choosing not to play a game that isn't worth the effort. Speaking is easy. Responding without thinking is impulsive. Keeping quiet when you want to shout. Waiting when you want to interrupt. Choosing your words with intention. This requires discipline and self-control. Silence isn't passivity, it's strategy. Sometimes it's the only way to prevent others from directing your energy where they want it, not where you decide. Silence is uncomfortable because it forces us to face things as they are. Words can distract, soften, or disguise, but silence lays situations bare. That's why many fear it and fill it with noise. Learning to sustain silence is learning to sustain tension without breaking. Recall practice. In your next difficult conversation, wait at least 3 seconds before responding. That space changes the tone and gives you time to decide if you really need to speak. Silence is also protection. Not everything you know needs to be said. Not everything you feel needs to be shared. There are battles won not by what you say, but by what you choose not to reveal. Information is power, and silence is the way to preserve it when necessary. But silence isn't just useful externally, it's also an internal tool. In a world of constant stimuli, silence is the place where you can listen to your own mind without interference. It's where ideas become clear, where you can recognize what is external noise and what is internal truth. Recall practice. Take a moment each day to be in complete silence. No music, no conversation, no screens. See how long you can be with yourself before you feel discomfort. Silence is also a language. It can express respect, disapproval, patience, or determination. A well-placed silence can say more than a speech. And unlike words, it cannot be misinterpreted in the same way. Its power lies in what it doesn't say. Don't confuse silence with submission. Being silent out of fear is not the same as being silent by choice. Silence as strength arises from the conscious decision not to waste energy, not to be provoked, and not to fuel conflicts that lead nowhere. Practice recall. The next time someone tries to provoke you, respond with silence and observe how the dynamic changes. He who controls the pace of the conversation usually controls the outcome. Silence also trains you to listen better. Most people listen to respond, not to understand. Intentional silence forces you to absorb what the other person is saying, not just wait for your turn to speak. This strengthens your relationships and your analytical skills. In crisis situations, silence can save you. Speaking without thinking under pressure almost always leads to mistakes that later need to be corrected. Silence gives you space to process before acting, and that pause can make the difference between a wise decision and an impulsive one. Practice recall. Before responding to a message or email that has upset you, wait an hour. What you say after that pause will be clearer and less reactive. Silence is also a reminder that you don't have to participate in everything. Not every accusation needs a defense. Not every rumor needs a response. Not every debate needs your opinion. Silence gives you the freedom to choose your battles and reserve your energy for what truly matters. Learning to be comfortable with silence means learning not to constantly seek validation. Those who can't stand silence often seek approval from others by filling every space with words, as if that confirms that they're present, that they matter. But strength isn't measured by how much you talk, but by how long you can sustain yourself without needing to talk. Practice recall. In your next meeting or group conversation, only participate when you have something essential to contribute. Notice how the weight of your words changes when they are inconsistent. Silence can also be a boundary. Not responding to disrespectful or manipulative behavior is a way of saying no without entering into an argument. Sometimes a lack of reaction is the most powerful response. But the most important silence is the one you practice with yourself. In a day filled with obligations and noise, giving yourself a few minutes of stillness is an act of self-care. This is where you can assess whether you're living coherently or simply reacting to external chaos. Practice recall. End each day with 5 minutes of complete silence. Ask yourself, did I act from my center today or from external pressure? Silence doesn't solve all problems, but it does put you in a clearer position to confront them. It's a pause that allows you to see the bigger picture before taking action. And in a fast-moving world, that pause is an advantage. It's not about living in silence, but about speaking with intention. Every word you say has a cost in energy and impact. Silence is the filter that ensures that cost is worth it. In an environment where everyone is competing to be heard, silence draws attention in a different way. Those who know how to remain silent don't lose presence. They multiply it. Because silence, well used, isn't absence, it's concentrated presence. In the end, silence as a strength is choosing when your energy is worth more than your opinion, when your peace is worth more than your impulse, and when your strategy is worth more than your reaction. You won't always win by talking. Sometimes you will win by remaining silent. Chapter 26. The weight of the given word. In times when everything can be cancelled, postponed, or renegotiated, keeping one's word has become a rarity. A given word is an invisible contract that requires no signatures, only integrity. When you say you'll do something, you're not simply communicating an intention, you're building or destroying your reputation. Trust isn't sustained by grand speeches, but by small, kept promises. Every time you say you'll be somewhere and arrive on time, you strengthen that trust. Every time you promise something and keep it without being reminded, your word gains weight. And every time you fail without a valid reason, you lose some of that value. Practice remembering it. Before making a promise, ask yourself if you can really keep it. Don't say yes to avoid an awkward moment. The awkward moment of saying no is much shorter than the damage of breaking it. A word given is also a reflection of respect, not only for others, but for yourself. If you get used to saying you'll do things and then not doing them, you train your mind not to take yourself seriously. You lose internal credibility, and without it, it's difficult to build discipline and confidence in your own decisions. Keeping your word doesn't mean you can never change your mind, but if you do, you should communicate it clearly and take responsibility for that change. People understand that life is unpredictable. What they don't forgive so easily is abandonment without explanation. Practice remembering. Make a list of the pending promises you have, no matter how small. Choose one and fulfill it today. You'll recover more than just the completed task. You'll regain some of your confidence. A word is also a tool of leadership. People who follow through on their promises inspire more than those who speak well but don't back up their actions. True leadership isn't about convincing, but about being a living example of consistency. Those who keep their word understand that not everything requires a positive response. Saying no honestly is more valuable than a yes that won't hold up. People respect those who are clear from the start more than those who promise to look good and then disappear. Practice remembering in your next conversation before committing to something. Consider whether you have the time, energy, and real intention to follow through. If not, decline firmly and respectfully. A given word carries more weight in difficult times. It's easy to keep your word when everything is comfortable. What defines your character is what you do when it's difficult to keep your word. In those moments, commitment ceases to be a formality and becomes a testament to who you truly are. Breaking promises without a solid reason destroys more than immediate trust. It sends the message that your words can't be trusted, and that message travels faster than you think. Personal, professional, and even family relationships depend on the strength of that trust. Practice recall. Recall a time when someone went above and beyond your expectations. That memory isn't accidental. It was etched because consistency and commitment are rare and valuable qualities. A word given doesn't expire just because your mood has changed. If you said you would do something, tiredness or lack of desire aren't excuses for not doing it. Commitment is especially measured in those moments when fulfilling it isn't the easiest thing to do. But keeping your word also means not overloading yourself with commitments. The more you promise, the harder it is to keep. Prudence in making commitments is the foundation for consistent fulfillment. Promising less and delivering more is better than promising a lot and delivering only halfway. Recall practice. Practice not committing to anything new for a week. Use that time to accomplish everything you already have on your plate. Your word isn't limited to what you say to others. What you promise yourself is just as important. If you say you'll start a habit, quit a vice, or face a fear, and you don't, you're breaking an internal contract. And the consequence of breaking it is the same. You lose credibility with yourself. Respect for your word is cumulative. It's not built in a single act, but in the constant repetition of fulfilled commitments. Over time, that reputation becomes one of the most powerful tools you can have. People trust someone with a track record of consistency more readily than someone who needs to explain why they didn't deliver. Recall practice. Think of 3 people whose word you deeply respect. Ask yourself what they have in common. Chances are they all follow through on what they say, no matter how difficult. Keeping one's word isn't a romantic act, it's a life strategy. It opens doors because people prefer to work, live, and build with someone who doesn't need reminders or excuses. It's not about perfection. Everyone makes mistakes sometimes. The difference is how you respond when they happen. Owning up to the mistake, apologizing and correcting it as quickly as possible also protects the weight of your word. Practice remembering. The next time you can't deliver on a promise, don't wait to be called back. Communicate it yourself and offer a solution or a clear new date. A word given is a silent commitment that builds your character every time you keep it. There are no shortcuts or rhetoric that can replace the simple act of keeping it. In a world where everything seems negotiable, your word can be your most valuable asset. And when others know that your promises are unbreakable, you won't need to convince them with words. Your actions will speak for themselves. Chapter 27. The Power of Saying No. Saying no is one of the most important and least practiced skills, not because the word is difficult to pronounce, but because it involves facing the discomfort of setting boundaries. In a world that rewards constant availability and being in everyone's good graces, saying no seems like an act of rebellion. But it's more than that. It's an act of self-respect. every time you say yes to something you don't want or can't do, you're saying no to something that matters in your life. Time and energy are limited resources. Every time you give them away thoughtlessly, you're sacrificing your priorities. Saying no clearly is the way to protect those resources. Many people are afraid to say no for fear of disappointing, missing out on opportunities, or being judged. But the truth is that saying yes when you should say no leads to half-hearted compliance, burnout, and over time, resentment. Practice recall. Before making a commitment, ask yourself if you really want to do it, if you have the energy to fulfill it, and if it contributes to your goals. If the answer is no to any of these questions, your answer should also be no. Saying no isn't being selfish, it's recognizing your limits. True selfishness lies in saying yes and then not following through, or following through carelessly because you didn't have the courage to refuse in the first place. Clarity in saying no also prevents confusion. A maybe or let me see that is really a no only prolongs the discomfort and creates false expectations. A direct no, said respectfully, saves time and maintains healthier relationships. Practice recall. The next time you're tempted to give an ambiguous answer to avoid upsetting others, say a short, clear no. You'll find that most people respect that more than an evasive response. Saying no is also a way to prioritize what you really want to build. If you accept everything that's proposed to you, your life will be filled with other people's agendas, not your own. No is the tool that allows you to make room for what truly matters. Those who don't know how to say no end up trapped in commitments that aren't theirs. The feeling of being constantly busy isn't necessarily a sign of productivity, but rather a lack of boundaries. Recall practice. Make a list of current commitments that don't contribute to your goals or values. Identify at least one you can let go of this week and do it. Saying no also protects your emotional energy. Not everyone deserves your time or attention. Saying no to toxic or draining relationships is just as important as saying yes to those that nourish you. Saying no doesn't require a lengthy explanation. The more you justify your refusal, the more you open the door to convincing others. A firm, concise no conveys that the decision has been made and there's no need for negotiation. Practice remembering. Practice saying no, I can't, or no, thank you without adding excuses. It may seem abrupt at first, but it's clearer and less tiring than going into long justifications. No is also a tool for maintaining your integrity. If something goes against your values, your answer should be an automatic no. Every time you compromise it to please, you lose some of your consistency. Opportunities truly aligned with your goals won't disappear just because you say no once. In fact, saying no to what doesn't fit opens the way for those that do. Recall practice. Think of a time when saying no led to something better later on. Keep that memory as proof that rejecting the wrong leaves room for the right. The fear of saying no is often based on assumptions about how others will react, but most of the time the reaction is less negative than you imagine. And if someone doesn't respect your no, the problem isn't your refusal, but their inability to accept boundaries. Saying no is also a statement of control over your life. It means not letting external demands completely dictate your agenda. It means deciding where you put your attention and energy. Practice recall. For a week before responding to any request, pause for a few seconds. This space will allow you to respond with intention rather than reacting impulsively. A no doesn't have to be cold or aggressive. It can be kind and firm at the same time. The key is clarity and not feeling guilty about prioritizing what's important to you. In the long run, saying no strengthens your relationships. The people around you learn that when you say yes, it's because you can and want to, not because you were forced to. This gives more value to your commitments. Recall practice. Recall a time when someone clearly and respectfully said no to you. Notice how, even if you didn't like it, you probably respected it more than if they had agreed and then declined. No is a tool for living with intention. Every time you use it well, you affirm that your life has a definite direction. Not everything deserves your time, and not everything deserves your energy. Protecting them is your responsibility. Not learning to say no means living at the mercy of others' decisions. Learning to say it means living in control of your own. Chapter 28. Patience as a Strategy. Patience isn't passivity. It's not waiting around doing nothing or settling for what's there. Patience is a conscious strategy for acting at the right moment. It's the difference between shooting on impulse and waiting for a clear target. In a world that worships speed and immediate gratification, patience is an advantage few possess. Acting too soon can be as damaging as not acting at all. Many opportunities are ruined because anxiety drives people to make decisions without sufficient information or adequate preparation. Patience allows you to assess, wait, and act when the odds are in your favor. Practice recall before making an important decision. Ask yourself whether you're acting out of clarity or anxiety. If it's the latter, wait. Patience doesn't eliminate risk, but it increases the quality of your actions. Patience is also endurance. Large projects, significant goals, and profound changes require time. Those who don't wait long enough to see the fruits uproot the seed before it can germinate. And it's not that the goal was impossible, it's that it was abandoned prematurely. Those who understand patience as a strategy know that every day counts, even if there are no visible results. Preparation, perseverance, and discipline are invisible in the short term, but decisive in the long term. Impatience seeks quick applause. Patience builds results that speak for themselves. Recall practice. Think of something you've accomplished that took more than 6 months of effort. Remember how far away it seemed at first, and how time and perseverance made it possible. That's the value of patience. Patience doesn't mean tolerating the intolerable. It's not about waiting indefinitely in situations that don't change or improve. Strategic patience includes knowing when to keep waiting and when to back down so as not to waste resources. In relationships, patience prevents destructive reactions. A moment of calm can prevent an unnecessary argument. Listening before responding, allowing time for emotions to cool, allows you to view the problem more objectively. Recall practice. The next time someone irritates you, wait at least an hour before responding. During that time, evaluate whether your initial reaction was really the best option. In business and personal projects, patience protects you from false opportunities. Not all that glitters is gold, and not all urgent proposals are real. Those who know how to wait more clearly filter what's worthwhile and what isn't. Patience is also a tool against fear. Fear compels us to act quickly to eliminate discomfort. But often, waiting and observing reveals that the problem wasn't that big, or that the best solution required a different time. Practice remembering when you feel like you have to decide now because you're afraid of losing something. Stop. Evaluate whether that urgency is real or fabricated. Patience disarms traps based on time pressure. Patience as a strategy also involves trusting the process. It's not about blind faith, but rather recognizing that things have a natural rhythm and that forcing them rarely yields better results. Some decisions can only be made when certain conditions are met, and rushing them is a surefire way to make mistakes. Impatience is costly. It leads to abandoning valuable projects, severing relationships that could grow, and changing course before efforts bear fruit. Patience, on the other hand, optimizes every investment of time and energy because it doesn't waste what has already been built. Recall practice. Review an area of your life where you've changed direction too many times. Ask yourself if the lack of results was due to poor strategy or a lack of patience. Patience also strengthens the mind. Waiting intentionally requires controlling impulses, managing frustration, and resisting the temptation to seek quick fixes. This control becomes a competitive advantage in any field. In a world that rewards the immediate, patience is countercultural. It's the skill that allows you to think in years, not days. It gives you perspective and reminds you that time is a resource that can work in your favor if you know how to use it. Practice recall. Choose a goal that requires at least a year of work. Break the effort down into small steps and commit to not evaluating the final result before that time frame. Strategic patience isn't a passive act but an active training. While you wait, you prepare, improve your skills, and strengthen your position. It's not that you're doing nothing, you're building so that when the time comes, you'll be ready. Waiting doesn't mean wasting time, it means investing it. Impatience wastes it without return. Those who know how to wait act fewer times but with greater impact. Recall practice. Observe an area where you act impulsively. Next time, delay the action for at least a day. and use that time to gather information or reinforce your preparation. Patience also protects you from yourself. Often, a project's greatest enemy is the creator's own anxiety. Wanting immediate results leads to unnecessary changes, hasty adjustments, and decisions that sabotage progress. In the end, patience as a strategy isn't simply waiting, it's waiting with purpose. It's knowing that every moment of calm is an opportunity to strengthen yourself, and every day without a visible result is just another brick in the foundation of something that will last. In an environment that pushes you to move quickly, choosing to wait is an act of control. And in a world that runs aimlessly, he who controls its pace controls his destiny. Chapter 29. The Value of Consistency. Consistency isn't a moral luxury, it's an indispensable foundation for a solid life. It's the ability to align what you think, what you say, and what you do without contradictions that destroy your credibility. Consistency is the bridge between your identity and your actions, and those who consistently cross it gain the trust of others, and above all, self-confidence. It's not about perfection. Everyone makes mistakes, and everyone has moments when they fail to act in accordance with their values. Consistency doesn't require infallibility. It requires a commitment to alignment. It's the decision to correct quickly when you notice your actions straying from what you claim to believe. Inconsistency isn't just perceived on the outside, it's felt on the inside as well. When you act against what you know is right, your mind and body register it. The weight of guilt, the silent discomfort, the feeling of having betrayed yourself appear. That's the sign that you're drifting away from yourself. Recall practice. Think of a time when you acted against what you knew was right. Remember the feeling that remained afterward. That discomfort is the internal alarm that coherence sets off when you break it. Consistency is also a leadership tool. People don't follow ideas, they follow examples. A brilliant speech loses all value if actions contradict it. On the other hand, a silent but consistent example speaks louder than words. Living with consistency isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it means saying no to tempting opportunities that don't fit with your principles. Sometimes it means losing approval or facing criticism for standing firm. But the momentary discomfort of consistency is always less than the prolonged weariness of living with contradictions. Recall practice. Identify a core value for yourself. Ask yourself if all your important decisions in the past week have been aligned with that value. If not, choose an immediate action to correct. Consistency also strengthens self-esteem. Every time you act in accordance with your principles, you reinforce the idea that you can trust yourself. And that self-confidence isn't built with motivational phrases, but with repeated actions. Sustained inconsistency, on the other hand, erodes your self-confidence. If you get used to saying one thing and doing another, your word loses value to you and others. Regaining that credibility can take years, but losing it can take only a moment. Recall practice. Think of a person whose consistency you admire. Analyze what they do to maintain it and ask yourself what you can apply to your life. Consistency also applies to how you treat people. You can't demand respect if you don't give it. You can't demand honesty if you withhold information. You can't demand commitment if you act indifferently. Others don't just hear what you say, they observe how you live. Consistency doesn't mean rigidity. Life changes, and with it, your knowledge and perspectives. You can modify your beliefs if you find reasons to do so. But when you do, your actions must change accordingly. What destroys consistency isn't changing your mind, but maintaining behaviors that contradict your new vision. Recall practice. Review a belief you've changed over time. Ask yourself if your current actions are aligned with this new way of thinking, or if you're still acting on old patterns. Consistency is also key in times of pressure. It's easy to maintain principles when nothing is at stake. The true test comes when acting inconsistently seems to give you an immediate advantage. That's where your strength is measured. Living with consistency also simplifies your life. When your values are clear and your actions align with them, decisions are easier. You don't have to make excuses or fabricate lies to justify yourself. Consistency eliminates the need to remember what you said in every situation because you always tell the truth. Recall practice. Make a list of your top 3 values, keep it, and refer to it before making important decisions for a week. See how it changes your choices. Consistency isn't about pretending. Faking it can be deceiving for a while, but sooner or later, actions reveal the truth. True consistency is internal. Even when no one is looking, you act according to what you believe. A repeated inconsistency not only affects your personal life, it also damages any project or relationship you're involved in. When people see that what you say and what you do don't match up, they begin to question everything you say. Trust, once broken, is difficult to restore. Recall practice. Think of an area where you feel your coherence is weak. Choose a small action you can take today to better align yourself with your values. Coherence is also a form of resistance in a world full of contradictions. Maintaining it means refusing to live according to the convenience of the moment and choosing to live by your own code. It's not always easy. There will be times when you wonder if it's worth it. But in the long run, consistency is what sustains your reputation, your peace of mind, and your ability to look yourself in the mirror without hesitation. Living with coherence means choosing integrity over comfort, truth over approval, and consistency over convenience. And while that may close some doors, it will open the ones that truly matter. Chapter 30: The Importance of Self-Discipline. Self-discipline is the ability to do what you said you would do, even when you don't feel like it. It doesn't depend on motivation or mood, but on a conscious decision to accomplish what you know is necessary. It's the muscle that sustains any long-term goal. Without self-discipline, good intentions remain unfinished plans. Self-discipline isn't repression. It's not about denying yourself all pleasure or living under a rigid regime. It's about making intentional choices, prioritizing what builds over what destroys. It's the ability to delay immediate gratification in order to achieve a greater result in the future. Recall practice. Think about something you accomplished that took months or years of work. Recognize that it wasn't daily motivation that made it possible, but rather the ability to stay the course despite fatigue or lack of desire. Self-discipline is more important than motivation because motivation is unstable. There are days when your energy is high and others when you don't want to do anything. If you depend on feeling inspired to act, your results will be as erratic as your mood. Those who master self-discipline understand that small repeated acts are worth more than occasional, large efforts. It's not about training 5 hours a day, it's about training 1 hour every day. It's not about working 20 hours on a weekend, it's about working consistently every week. Practice recall. Choose a habit you want to develop. Dedicate a set amount of time to it each day for a month. Observe how consistency creates stronger results than any single effort. Self-discipline also involves knowing how to say no to anything that keeps you from your goals. Not everything that comes your way deserves your attention. Every distraction you accept is energy diverted from what truly matters. Lack of self-discipline is costly. Projects are left unfinished. Health deteriorates. Opportunities are lost. Life doesn't reward intentions, it rewards sustained action. Recall practice. Make a list of 3 areas in your life where you've started something and haven't finished it. Ask yourself if it was due to a lack of real resources or a lack of self-discipline. Self-discipline isn't born in a flash of light. It's trained like any skill. It starts with small steps, keeping simple commitments until they become part of your character. Over time, that ability expands into more complex areas. In times of difficulty, self-discipline acts as an anchor. When emotions push you to give up, the habits you've built keep you going. This consistency is what makes the difference between those who succeed and those who fall by the wayside. Recall practice. Identify a habit you've maintained for more than 6 months. Analyze the strategies you use to stick with it. Apply those same strategies to an area where you need more self-discipline. Self-discipline is also freedom. Although it may seem contradictory, the most disciplined people are the most free because they don't depend on impulse or circumstances to act. They have control over their decisions and their time. On the other hand, a lack of self-discipline makes you a slave to your mood, distractions, and external pressure. If you don't control your habits, they control you. Recall practice. For 1 week, do something uncomfortable or something you normally put off every day. Training yourself to act without relying on desire strengthens your self-discipline. Self-discipline isn't rigid, it's also adaptable. There are times to push and times to rest. Planned rest is part of the strategy, not a sign of weakness. The key is not to confuse rest with giving up. In any important project, there will be stages where you don't see visible results. This is where self-discipline sustains the process. Continuing to work when there are no immediate rewards is what separates those who achieve results from those who give up. Practice recall. When you feel like you're not making progress, look back and acknowledge the progress you've made. This reminder reinforces the patience and discipline needed to continue. Self-discipline is contagious. When someone close to you sees your perseverance, they're motivated to apply it in their own lives. Without saying a word, you become an example. Don't confuse self-discipline with destructive self-importance. Discipline is based on commitment and consistency, not beating yourself up when you fail. If you don't follow through one day, don't use it as an excuse to quit. Get back on track the next day. Practice recall. If you break a habit chain, avoid falling into the "I've already messed up" mentality. Restart immediately. One failure doesn't erase all previous progress. In the long run, self-discipline builds confidence, not just the confidence others have in you, but the confidence you have in yourself. Knowing you can be trusted to accomplish what you decide to do is one of the most powerful forms of personal security. Those who master self-discipline don't need to rely on external factors to move forward. They don't wait for perfect conditions because they know they never will be. They act with what they have, adjust along the way, and stay the course. Self-discipline is the invisible foundation of any worthwhile achievement. Without it, talent is wasted, opportunities slip away, and goals are diluted. With it, even someone with fewer resources can surpass someone with more but lacks perseverance. In a world that seeks quick results and easy solutions, self-discipline is an advantage that distinguishes those who stick with it from those who give up at the first difficulty. Chapter 31. The Power of Perseverance. Perseverance is the determination to keep moving forward, even when initial enthusiasm has faded. It's the ability to stay the course when results take time, when fatigue mounts, and when everything seems to be moving slower than you expected. Without perseverance, any goal becomes a series of unfinished attempts. Perseverance isn't about resisting out of pride or clinging to what doesn't work. It's about having the clarity to differentiate between a temporary obstacle and a dead end. Intelligent perseverance adjusts the path without abandoning the goal. Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a month and underestimate what they can achieve in a year. Perseverance teaches you to think long-term, to understand that true transformations aren't measured in days but in years of consistency. Recall practice. Think of something important you've achieved. Recall the times you were close to giving up. Recognize that you achieved it not by avoiding difficulties, but by overcoming them. Perseverance is also an antidote to frustration. Every time you overcome an obstacle, you develop a tolerance for discomfort. You learn that pain, delay, and effort aren't signs that something is wrong, but rather a natural part of the process. Not everyone perseveres because not everyone is willing to face repeated discomfort. But every time you decide to continue, you strengthen a mental muscle that will make you more resilient next time. Recall practice. Choose an area where you gave up prematurely. Ask yourself what would have happened if you had continued for another month. This mental exercise will remind you that many results come just after the point where most people give up. Perseverance doesn't mean ignoring the signs of change. Sometimes, the way you persist requires adaptation. Changing your strategy isn't giving up. It's adjusting your route to reach the same destination. Perseverance also requires patience. You can't force nature to accelerate its pace. A seed needs time to germinate, and your work needs time to bear fruit. Forcing the process often damages it. Recall practice. Look at someone else's accomplishment you admire. Investigate how much time and effort it took to achieve it. Use this fact as a reminder that great things take longer than they seem. Perseverance is easier when you have a strong reason to keep going. It's not enough to simply want a result. You need a motive powerful enough to endure the effort and the wait. That reason is what keeps you going when fatigue or doubt appear. The fear of failure holds you back more than real difficulties. Often, failure doesn't come because the goal was impossible, but because you gave up too soon. Perseverance, on the other hand, increases your chances of success simply because it keeps you in the game long enough. Recall practice. The next time you're tempted to give up, write down 3 reasons why you started. Read them aloud. This reconnection with your initial motivation can give you the strength to keep going. Perseverance doesn't always feel heroic. Sometimes it's silent and repetitive. It's getting up and doing what you have to do one more day, without much applause or immediate rewards. But that accumulation of days is what ultimately builds visible results. In relationships, perseverance also matters. It doesn't mean putting up with the unacceptable, but rather investing time and effort into building trust, overcoming conflicts, and maintaining a strong bond. Remembrance practice. Think of a relationship you value that has overcome difficult times. Recognize that perseverance on both sides is what allowed it to continue. Perseverance also involves learning to manage demotivation. You won't always be inspired, and that's normal. The key is to keep doing the essentials even on those down days, because every little bit of progress counts. Perseverance isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. The goal isn't to finish quickly, but to finish in one piece. Those who burn out in the first few meters won't reach the finish line. Recall practice. Identify an important goal you have right now. Break the journey into small steps and commit to completing one each day, no matter how small it may seem. Your environment can influence your ability to persevere. Surrounding yourself with people who support your vision and understand the value of perseverance makes you more likely to continue. On the other hand, those who give up quickly tend to project their frustration onto you. Perseverance is also an act of faith, not blind faith, but the confidence that your accumulated effort will bear fruit, even if you don't see immediate results. It's understanding that every step, no matter how small, brings you closer to your goal. Recall practice. When you feel like you're slowing down, look back and count how many steps you've taken since you started. This perspective changes the feeling of being stuck. In the end, perseverance isn't just a skill, it's a decision you make every day, deciding that no matter what happens, you'll keep moving toward what matters. That repeated decision is what distinguishes you from those who stop. Persevering doesn't guarantee everything will turn out the way you expect, but giving up guarantees it won't. And if you have to choose between the uncertainty of effort and the certainty of not achieving it, it's always better to choose to keep going. Chapter 32. Clarity as a tool. Clarity is the ability to see things as they are, without distortions caused by emotion, pressure, or mental confusion. It is a tool, not an accident. It doesn't come about by chance, it is cultivated. Without clarity, decisions are based on assumptions, and faulty assumptions lead to faulty actions. Clarity begins with precisely defining what you want. You can't move forward strongly toward a goal that isn't clearly defined in your mind. Many people believe they can't achieve what they want because they lack luck or resources, when in reality what they lack is a specific goal. Practice recall. Take a piece of paper and write down exactly what you want to achieve in an important area of your life. Avoid vague phrases like, "I want to improve my health," and replace them with, "I want to be able to run 5 kilometers without stopping for 6 months." Clarity comes from concreteness. Clarity also involves knowing what you don't want. Defining boundaries is just as important as defining goals. Not everything that seems like an opportunity is. Saying yes to something that doesn't fit your direction is just as damaging as failing to act. A confused mind wastes energy on paths that lead nowhere. A clear mind moves with less effort because each step points in the right direction. Clarity doesn't eliminate obstacles, but it reduces unnecessary movement. Recall practice. Review your current commitments. Ask yourself which ones don't align with what you really want. Consider eliminating or delegating them to free up mental and energetic space. Clarity doesn't mean having everything under control or having all the answers. It means knowing what's essential and what's secondary. When pressure comes, a clear mind prioritizes what's important and discards what doesn't add value. A lack of clarity is paid for with wasted time and energy. The more vague your goal, the more likely you are to constantly change course. Clarity is an anchor that keeps your direction steady, even when the environment changes. Recall practice. Think of a time when you were confused about what to do. Recall how that confusion affected your decisions and how long it took you to get back on track. Then compare it to a time when your goal was clear, and notice the difference in speed and confidence. Clarity also protects against manipulation. When you know what you want and what you don't, it's harder for others to impose their agenda on you. Confusion opens the door for others' priorities to become yours without you even realizing it. A clear mind also makes better decisions under pressure. Instead of reacting impulsively, it assesses the situation and responds with intention. This doesn't mean you never make mistakes, but your errors are more consciously present and therefore easier to correct. Recall practice. When faced with an urgent decision, take a breath and ask yourself, what's the main goal here? That simple reminder can give you the clarity you need to make a good decision. Clarity isn't a permanent state, it's lost and gained depending on your attention and mental habits. Therefore, maintaining it requires constant review. Even the clearest goals become blurred if you don't remind yourself and update them. Clarity also depends on your environment. Noise, distractions, and information overload can cloud your vision. Creating spaces for silence and reflection is essential to maintaining it. Recall practice. Set aside at least 15 minutes a day to be free from screens and interruptions. Use this time to mentally review your course and see if you're going off track. Clarity is an efficiency tool. It allows you to do less but better. When you're clear about what really matters, you stop wasting energy on things that don't add up and focus your resources on things that do move the needle. Without clarity, even hard work can take you to places you don't want to go. It's possible to invest years of effort only to discover you were climbing the wrong mountain. Clarity assures you that every step counts in the right direction. Practice remembering. Review your current goals and ask yourself if they are still yours or if they were inherited from the expectations of others. Clarity also means having the courage to redefine your path. In relationships, clarity avoids misunderstandings. Stating what you think and expect directly reduces conflict and frustration. Prolonged ambiguity is fertile ground for assumptions and resentment. Clarity also helps you make quick decisions when necessary. It's not about acting impulsively. Rather, by having your priorities defined, you immediately know what fits and what doesn't. Practice recall. The next time you receive a proposal, compare it to your priority list. If it doesn't contribute to your main direction, reject it without guilt. Clarity doesn't make you immune to error, but it does accelerate learning. When you know what you wanted to achieve, it's easier to identify where you fell short and adjust your course. On the other hand, if you were never clear about your destination, it's difficult to know whether you achieved it or not. Cultivating clarity requires time, reflection, and sometimes compromise. You can't have a clear vision if your life is filled with commitments that contribute nothing. Deciding what to leave out is just as important as deciding what to include. Ultimately, clarity as a tool is what transforms energy into results. It allows you to move with precision, save effort, and protect yourself from paths that lead nowhere. And while maintaining it requires discipline, the cost of confusion will always be greater. Chapter 33. The Power of Focus. Focus is the ability to direct your attention and energy toward a specific goal without getting distracted by unhelpful distractions. It's not an innate talent. It's a conscious choice that requires training. We live in a world that competes for your attention every second, and those who don't learn to protect it become slaves to the urgent, neglecting the important. Focus begins with clarity. You can't focus on something you haven't defined. Once you know what you want, focus acts as a filter that lets through only what contributes to that goal and blocks out what doesn't. Most people fail not because of a lack of ability, but because they spend their resources in too many directions at once. The power of focus lies in its ability to multiply results. What you do with full attention is done faster and better than what you do while your mind jumps between tasks. Multitasking isn't a skill, it's a constant drain on energy. Each shift in attention costs time and wears down your concentration. Recall practice that take an important task that you usually do with distractions. Do it once without interruptions and measure how long it takes and how the result turns out. That experience will be enough to show you that focus not only saves time but also improves quality. Focus requires the discipline to say no to what derails your course. This isn't selfishness, it's protection. Every unnecessary commitment you make is time stolen from what truly matters. Focus requires learning to prioritize without guilt. Don't confuse focus with blind obsession. A good approach is flexible. It adjusts when necessary, but never loses sight of the ultimate goal. Changing your method doesn't mean losing your way, it means optimizing it. Recall practice. Make a list of the 3 most important tasks of your day. Start with the first, and don't move on to the second until you've completed it. Repeat this pattern for a week and see how your productivity changes. Focus also protects your mental energy. Being busy isn't the same as being productive. Many people burn out with constant activities that don't bring them closer to anything meaningful. Focus forces you to question every action. Is this bringing me closer to my goal or just keeping me busy? A lack of focus creates a fragmented life. You jump from project to project without finishing any. You accumulate to-dos, and you live with the feeling that you never have enough time. The problem isn't a lack of hours, it's a lack of sustained direction. Recall practice, and for 1 week, record how you spend each hour of your day. Mark in one color the activities that actually bring you closer to your goals, and in another the ones that don't. The ratio will show you whether you're focused or distracted. Focus also has an emotional component. A scattered mind is more vulnerable to anxiety because it always feels like there's something unfinished business it's not addressing. On the other hand, when you're focused on a single thing, your mind calms down because it knows it's doing the right thing at that moment. The power of focus is amplified when you combine it with consistency. There's no point in concentrating intensely one day and then scattering the next. Progress is built through sustained attention, not occasional bursts of focus. Practice recall. Choose an important goal and dedicate at least 30 minutes a day to working on it without interruption, no matter what. Measure your progress after a month and see the impact of consistent focus. In relationships, focus translates into presence. Truly listening to someone without checking your phone or thinking about anything else is a form of respect and deep connection. A lack of focus in communication leads to misunderstandings and emotional distance. Focus is also key to learning. Information you receive while your attention is fragmented is superficially recorded and quickly forgotten. In contrast, information you study with mindfulness is assimilated and integrated into your thinking. Recall practice. The next time you read or study something important, turn off notifications and set a timer for 20 minutes to work uninterrupted. You'll notice how you understand and remember more. Your surroundings influence your ability to focus. A tidy space, free of unnecessary stimuli, promotes concentration. It's no coincidence that many people accomplish more in a quiet library than in a noisy office. Focus doesn't mean you'll never get distracted. It means that when you do, you're able to notice the distraction and quickly return to the main task. This ability to return to your center is what separates those who make progress from those who get lost in constant detours. Recall practice. When you notice your attention wandering elsewhere, stop and mentally say, "Come back," then return to the task. This small habit trains your mind to quickly return to the present. The power of focus also lies in its ability to build mastery. The more focused you are on an area, the faster you develop skills and the deeper they become. Scattershot, on the other hand, keeps your level on the surface. Modern life rewards speed and multitasking, but great achievements have always been the result of focused work. No masterpiece was built by jumping between 100 things at once. Ultimately, focus is a form of respect for yourself and your goals. It's deciding that your attention is too valuable to give away to whatever happens in front of you. It's a commitment to what matters and a conscious rejection of what doesn't. And when you learn to harness the power of focus, you discover that you don't need more time to accomplish more. You need less distraction. Chapter 34. The courage to say no. Saying no is one of the simplest acts in appearance and the most difficult in practice. It requires inner strength to defend your time, your energy, and your priorities. Many people say yes out of fear of disappointment, to seek approval, or to avoid conflict. But every yes you say to something that doesn't benefit you is a no you say to something that truly matters. The courage to say no comes from clarity. You can't firmly refuse if you don't know what you want and what you're not willing to accept. When your boundaries are blurred, any request seems reasonable and any commitment seems obligatory. Recall practice. Make a list of 3 things you agreed to do that, in retrospect, you shouldn't have agreed to. Ask yourself what prevented you from saying no and what would have happened if you had said it. Saying no isn't being selfish, it's an act of personal responsibility. If you fill your schedule with what others want from you, you won't have room for what you want to build. Life will always present you with more options than you can handle, and if you don't choose carefully, external demands will consume your ability to make decisions. The difficulty in saying no often stems from the fear of others' reactions. We fear being seen as cold, uncooperative, or disinterested. However, the person who gets angry because you set a boundary was probably benefiting from you not having one. Practice remembering the next time someone asks you for something that doesn't fit with your priorities. Take a deep breath before you answer. Say, "I can't commit to that right now." This statement is honest and respects both your time and the relationship. Saying no also means accepting that you can't please everyone. Approval seeking is a never-ending trap. Even if you accept everything, there will always be someone who expects more. Courage lies in accepting that your worth doesn't depend on your constant availability. In many cases, the automatic yes comes from the discomfort caused by the silence after a request. We feel pressured to fill that silence with an acceptance. Learning to tolerate that moment and respond calmly is a powerful skill. Recall practice. When someone makes an unexpected request, pause for 3 seconds before responding. That brief moment can give you the clarity to respond honestly rather than impulsively. Saying no doesn't mean closing all doors. It means consciously choosing which ones to open. Not every opportunity is right for you, and accepting one that isn't a good fit can prevent you from receiving a better one. The time and energy you spend on the wrong thing are resources you can't invest in the right one. The courage to say no is also a way to protect your health. Overcommitment leads to chronic stress, fatigue, and resentment. Taking on more than you can handle isn't a sign of strength. It's a form of self-abandonment. Recall practice and take an inventory of your current commitments. Mark in red those you accepted only out of obligation. Evaluate which ones you can reduce or eliminate in the coming weeks. A firm no is most effective when communicated respectfully. It's not about aggressively rejecting, but rather expressing your limits without blame. A calm and confident no doesn't require extensive justification. Saying no is also a filter for your relationships. Someone who respects your boundaries shows that they value you as a person, not just as a resource. Someone who reacts poorly to a no shows that their interest lies more in what they can get from you than in your well-being. Recall practice. Recall a time you said no, and the person accepted it maturely. Contrast this with a time when your refusal caused discomfort. Observe what each reaction taught you about the relationship. The courage to say no is strengthened with practice. At first, it may feel uncomfortable or even threatening, but over time you realize it's an act that preserves your freedom and integrity. In the workplace, saying no is essential to maintaining the quality of your work. Accepting more than you can handle not only affects your health, it also reduces the quality of what you deliver. An excessive yes can damage your reputation more than a well-founded no. Saying no also helps you stay focused. Every new commitment competes with the projects you already have underway. If you accept everything, inevitably one of them will be affected, and it's usually the one you care about most. Practice remembering. Before taking on something new, ask yourself, is this moving me closer to my goals or further away? If the answer isn't a clear yes, it's a disguised no. The courage to say no isn't an isolated skill. It's linked to your self-esteem. Those who value themselves understand that their time and energy are limited resources and act accordingly. Those who don't allow any external demands to take priority over their own needs. Ultimately, saying no is an act of honesty. It's recognizing that you can't be everywhere, help with everything, or please everyone. And it's also an act of respect for others, because when you say yes only out of obligation, you're not giving your best. Saying no isn't about closing off possibilities, it's about choosing which ones deserve your yes. This conscious choice is what allows you to build a life that reflects your true priorities, not an agenda dictated by other people's expectations. Chapter 35. The Value of Patience. Patience is the ability to remain calm and determined while time takes its course. It's not passivity or resignation, it's the conscious decision not to rush what needs to mature. In a world that rewards the immediate, patience seems like a scarce resource, but it's one of the most powerful. Patience protects you from impulsive decisions that can have costly consequences. When you act without waiting for the right moment, you're likely to spend more energy and resources correcting mistakes than if you had waited. It's not about not acting, but about acting when conditions are favorable. Recall practice. Think of a time when impatience led to a negative outcome. Ask yourself if waiting a little longer would have changed the situation. Patience is also a form of trust. It's believing that the effort you put in today will bear fruit, even if you don't see it immediately. A seed doesn't germinate the day after it's planted. The farmer who digs up the soil every week to check if the seed is growing ends up destroying it. Patience doesn't mean inactivity. It means continuing to do what's necessary, even if results take time. It means moving forward without despair and staying the course even when it seems like nothing is changing. Practice recall. Identify a long-term goal you have and define small actions you can take each week without expecting immediate results. Impatience often stems from comparison. When you see others achieving what you're looking for sooner, you feel like you're falling behind. But every process is unique. Comparing yourself to others is forgetting that the soil, the seed, and the climate are never the same. Patience is also emotional resilience. Waiting isn't easy when there's uncertainty, but enduring that discomfort makes you stronger. A patient person isn't immune to frustration, but they know that giving into it rarely makes things better. Recall practice. Recall a time when your patience was rewarded. Analyze what you did to stay steadfast and how you can repeat that pattern in other areas. In relationships, patience allows us to understand and accept the other person's pace. Not everyone processes emotions at the same time or makes decisions at the same speed. Impatience in a conversation can turn a misunderstanding into unnecessary conflict. Patience also helps you learn. Deep skills take time to develop. Students who look for shortcuts in their training achieve superficial results. In contrast, those who accept the pace of learning consolidate their knowledge and retain it longer. Recall practice. Think of something you do easily today, but that was difficult for you at the time. Recognize that your improvement was the result of consistent practice and the time you invested. Lack of patience is one of the reasons many people abandon important goals. They mistake natural delays as a sign that something isn't working. But most significant progress is invisible at first. Having patience doesn't mean accepting others' inaction when it affects your life. It also means knowing when to act, so as not to get trapped in indefinite waiting. Healthy patience is active, not passive. Recall practice. Identify a situation where you've been waiting without taking any action. Ask yourself what steps you could take now to move forward while waiting for the moment you've been waiting for. Patience is also a form of self-control. Not reacting immediately to a provocation allows you to respond more intelligently. Impulse often exacerbates problems, while pause opens the door to better solutions. In a fast-paced world, patience becomes a competitive advantage. While others burn out chasing quick results, you can build solid and stable results. What is achieved with patience tends to last longer. Recall practice. When you feel rushed to finish something, ask yourself if quality will be affected by speed. If the answer is yes, slow down. Patience isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it means waiting silently while others doubt you or while life seems to be moving against you. But that discomfort is part of the strength developed by those who know how to wait. Impatience can destroy relationships, projects, and opportunities. Patience, on the other hand, creates space for things to develop naturally. Forcing something that isn't ready rarely yields good results. Recall practice. Think back to a time when you regretted acting too quickly. Ask yourself what signs you ignored because you didn't want to wait. The value of patience lies in its ability to keep moving without anxiety. It's not about staying still, but about moving forward without despair. Calmness in waiting is as important as acting at the right moment. Patience is also necessary with yourself. Changing habits, overcoming fears, or healing wounds takes time. Pressuring yourself to speed up internal processes only increases frustration. Recall practice. Think of a personal change that took you months or years. Recognize that each step, no matter how small, was part of your progress. Ultimately, patience is an act of faith and intelligence. Faith that time and effort will bear fruit, and intelligence to understand that haste rarely builds anything solid. Cultivating patience is cultivating your ability to endure, adapt, and move forward without wearing yourself out prematurely. Chapter 36: Discipline as Freedom. Discipline isn't a chain that binds you, it's a key that sets you free. Those without discipline live as slaves to their impulses, procrastination, and circumstances. Those who develop it gain self-control and can direct their lives wherever they want. It's not a punishment. It's a system of conscious choice repeated until it becomes a habit. True freedom isn't doing whatever you want at any given moment, but rather having the ability to do what's necessary even when you don't feel like it. If you act only when motivation is present, you'll make little and uneven progress. Discipline replaces motivation when it disappears. Recall practice. Think of a goal you achieved not because you always wanted to work on it, but because you forced yourself to do it even on difficult days. That's the power of discipline. Discipline begins with small commitments. You don't need to transform your life overnight. Start with simple actions you can accomplish without excuses and gradually increase the difficulty. The important thing isn't the magnitude of the initial effort, but the consistency. Those who don't develop discipline live at the mercy of circumstances. They depend on the mood of the day, the opinions of others, and the distractions of their surroundings. Discipline allows you to act even in the midst of discomfort and pressure. Practice recall. Choose a positive habit you want to form and commit to practicing it every day for at least 30 days, no matter what. There's no negotiating with yourself. Discipline is also a filter for your priorities. You can't commit to everything and expect to maintain high performance. Discipline requires selecting what truly matters and focusing your energy there. In everyday life, discipline manifests itself in small decisions. Getting up at the scheduled time, eating what nourishes rather than what pleases in the moment, dedicating time to important work rather than entertainment. It's not a constant struggle. It's building a system that makes the right action the default option. Recall practice. Identify 3 areas of your life where you tend to give in to comfort instead of doing what's right. Design a strategy to narrow that gap, even if it's just a small change. Discipline doesn't mean absolute rigidity. It's possible to adapt to circumstances without losing commitment. The key is to adjust without giving up. One atypical day doesn't destroy discipline, but several consecutive days of neglect can. Many see discipline as a limitation because they confuse pleasure with freedom. Without discipline, immediate pleasures become chains that hinder growth. True freedom requires self-control. Recall practice. Make a list of activities or habits that give you immediate pleasure but have long-term negative consequences. Ask yourself if discipline in those areas would bring you closer to a more fulfilling life. Discipline prepares you for when life demands more of you. In times of crisis, those with solid habits don't rely on improvised willpower. Their daily structure is already trained to sustain them. At work, discipline separates those who achieve consistent results from those who rely on strokes of luck or inspiration. No matter how talented you are, without discipline, progress will be unstable and vulnerable to interruption. Recall practice. Recall a time when your perseverance helped you achieve an important result. Analyze which habits were key and how you could strengthen them. Discipline is also a form of self-respect. Keeping your promises strengthens your self-confidence. Every time you break a personal commitment, you send the message that your word carries no weight. Lack of discipline isn't solved with more motivation, but with more structure. Designing an environment that encourages good decisions is just as important as the mental strength to make them. Practice. Recall. Observe your surroundings and eliminate one element that encourages your bad habits. Replacing it with something that pushes you in the right direction will make discipline easier to sustain. Discipline isn't exclusive to professional or physical life. It's also essential for cultivating healthy relationships, learning new skills, or staying calm in times of stress. Without emotional discipline, it's easy to react impulsively and damage what you value. Discipline is strengthened through repetition. The more you keep your commitments, the more natural it will become. What initially requires conscious effort becomes part of your identity over time. Recall practice. Choose an action you want to integrate into your routine and link it to something you already do automatically. For example, after brushing your teeth, spend 5 minutes meditating. The link between discipline and freedom is clear. Discipline gives you control over your time, your energy, and your resources. With it, you choose your path instead of having others choose it for you. Without it, you live reacting to what happens without the ability to truly make decisions. Discipline isn't the opposite of rest or fun. In fact, it makes them more valuable because they're enjoyed without guilt or the burden of unfinished business. Disciplined people know when to work and when to stop, and that balances their lives. Practice recall. Schedule a block of rest or recreation only after completing an important task. Notice how the satisfaction you feel changes when you enjoy it. Ultimately, discipline as freedom is the understanding that governing yourself is the greatest independence you can achieve. When your actions are not dictated by laziness, doubt, or fear, you have the power to build the life you want rather than settling for the one you're given. Chapter 37. The Power of Persistence. Persistence is the ability to keep moving forward even when progress is slow, conditions are adverse, or results seem distant. It's the difference between those who achieve their goals and those who give up halfway. Talent, intelligence, and resources lose strength without the will to persist again and again. Persistence isn't about pointless repetition, it's about staying on track, adjusting your strategy when necessary. Those who persist don't ignore obstacles. They face them with the conviction that each attempt brings them one step closer to their goal. Failure doesn't stop them, it only redirects them. Recall practice. Think of something you achieved after several failed attempts. Remember how you felt each time you failed and what drove you to keep going. Lack of persistence is often disguised as realism. We say something isn't possible when in reality we're not willing to keep trying. But history is full of examples of people who persisted beyond reason and ultimately achieved what seemed impossible. Persistence requires accepting that time is part of the process. What is built quickly is rarely solid. Perseverance of structure, learning, and resilience are 3 elements that sustain any long-term achievement. Recall practice. Choose a goal you've abandoned. Ask yourself if it was due to a lack of real resources or a lack of persistence. Persistence doesn't always bring immediate results, but it always brings internal progress. Every time you decide to continue, you strengthen your character and train your mind to not give up at the first difficulty. This personal strengthening is as valuable as the final achievement. On many occasions, persistence will lead you to loneliness. There will be times when others don't understand why you keep trying. This incomprehension is proof. If your commitment depends on external approval, it's not persistence, it's convenience. Recall practice. Recall a situation in which you kept going despite others telling you to stop. Analyze what made you stick with it and what you learned from that moment. Persistence also means adapting. It's not about insisting on a method that doesn't work, but rather about finding new ways to approach your goal. Stubbornness clings to a method. Persistence clings to the objective. Lack of persistence often stems from impatience. We expect results to come quickly, and if they don't, we assume something is wrong. But the reality is that many achievements take longer than we'd like, and that time isn't an enemy, it's an ally. Recall practice. Think of a goal you achieved long ago. What would have happened if you had given up halfway through? Persistence isn't just a tool for achieving external goals, it's also vital for personal growth. Overcoming a negative habit, strengthening a virtue, or learning a new skill requires repeating efforts day after day. even when there seems to be no progress. At work, persistence translates into the ability to continue producing value, even in adverse circumstances. The most reliable professionals are not those who excel only on easy days, but those who remain steadfast when the pressure is high. Recall practice. Identify an area of your life where you gave up on an effort because you didn't see immediate results. Imagine what would have happened if you had continued. Persisting doesn't mean not resting. Rest is part of the strategy to maintain energy and keep going. The key is that rest doesn't turn into giving up. The strength of persistence lies in its accumulation. Every attempt adds value, even those that seem like failures. A persistent person understands that every imperfect step is part of the path to a better outcome. Recall practice. Make a list of 3 things you've accomplished through perseverance. Write them down as a reminder for when you're tempted to give up. In the relationship. Persian. Recall practice. Write your reason. Life will test your persistence. There will be days when nothing goes as expected, weeks with no signs of progress, and perhaps months of uncertainty. But if you stay the course, the time will come when what seemed impossible begins to take shape. Persisting doesn't guarantee everything will turn out as planned, but it does guarantee you won't be left wondering what would have happened if you had kept at it. That peace of mind that comes from knowing you gave it your all is worth more than any outcome. The strength of persistence lies in the fact that over time, it doubles the resilience of circumstances. What seems like an impenetrable wall today may be merely an obstacle overcome tomorrow. What matters is not how many times you fall, but how many times you decide to get back up. Recall practice. The next time you face a setback, instead of asking yourself, "Why is this happening to me?" ask yourself, "What can I do now to keep moving forward?" Persistence is the ultimate test of your commitment. It's not inspiration that will get you to your goal. It's the ability to keep going when inspiration is past. It's an act of pure will, sustained day after day until the goal ceases to be a possibility and becomes a reality. And that's all for today. But if you feel like we're just scratching the surface, don't worry. The first link in the description gives you access to more advanced content that can make a real difference. Thank you.